The runners are actually going to be playing on very different versions of the game.
They are going to, for the Richter version of the game, they are going to be playing on completely official versions of the original PlayStation hardware. It's completely official. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Well, yeah, so one thing to note, both Houseless Gamer and Epikai 13 are actually playing on the PSP version of the game that came with Dracula X Chronicles, which has some interesting redubbing, we'll say, a relocalization, if you will. And that's possibly what it's most well known for, is along with having wrong warps in the Alucard mode. But yeah, basically on all of these, you're going to just be seeing the fastest route to Dracula. Wow, he's totally in this mode. To Shaft should be Dracula. And it's going to be just this crazy optimized movement. If you want to dive a little into the details of what all these inputs are that they're doing, TurboDog, they make it look simple, but I can tell you it's not.
So, I mean, there's a lot to kind of dissect here. So Richter is very much, as Realm Scout likes to mention, a glass cannon inside of this game. He takes a ton of damage, and he doesn't really get any survivability boosts. He gets a bunch of special maneuvers that he can do, though. As we're watching here, he is able to do an air slash, which is a move that allows him to move forward relatively quickly in the air. It does damage and is completely invincible upon casting. You're also seeing some sliding here. Sliding, if you are able to just slide, is the fastest form of normal movement that Richter has available to him. But it does require him to have floor to move on, and flat floor at that. So for most of this, you're going to be seeing Richter doing a super jump, which is the uppercut and the air slash. But you will see periods here and there of sliding and bull kicks. And those are going to be really good for manipulating the fastest form of movement and positional advantages here and there.
Yeah, and every time they're doing an air slash, it's up into a fireball. And then every time they're doing like an uppercut, it's down, up, jump. And being able to do all these in a quick sequence is incredibly difficult. They have to sometimes buffer it, and then after that, it doesn't even work all the time. The input reader for Saturn is notoriously awful, and players have kind of adjusted to it over the years for just how bad it is.
I'll do the Talic Zealot thing and say that the input reader is very picky about what it wants. It wants something very specific.
We have seen a couple runners fall already. This is a little unfortunate. It's going to put both their teams back a bit at the start, but it's not the end of the world. There's a lot that can go wrong in these races. So one death's certainly not the end of it. I may even expect to see these runners kind of save, and especially in the Richter All Bosses race, because if they died towards the end of that, that's kind of a 20-minute loss. So I would expect we see some saving from additional team members later on.
Yeah, and I mean, these are time losses, but as we'll see for the Alucard categories, Richter is going to be the run where you can legitimately die. Your life bar goes to 0, you get the game over screen. When it comes to Alucard, you don't really die, you just die inside, because you lose a second here, 5 seconds there. And it may not seem like a lot, there's not the finality of that game over. You will lose time, and you just gotta kind of eat it in this type of format.
Yeah. But yeah, certainly, even though we see a death here, depending on how risky the Alucard routes end up being, there's incredibly difficult glitches that you can just get stuck on for minutes. So there's swings that can happen all over the place. Even in Maria, I have seen some runners die towards the end of that run as well. So yeah, that's pretty big.
So even though Talic managed to make it to the second castle, he still ran into an issue there where he actually took a hit from a Black Panther. Especially in the second castle, Richter takes enormous quantities of damage from enemies inside of here. You can expect Richter to die in between 1 to 4 hits in any circumstance, no matter how many health ups you got. Let's see. So I mean, okay, so Talik's taking the lower route here.
Strat there. he could have easily done a air slash right under that Minotaur's axe to be a little safer and make sure he didn't die, but he went straight for the vault kick into air slash to gain like half a second, and that was incredibly tight timing. That's very impressive on his part to go for that.
Something to note as well, so Talik spent quite a bit of time kind of looking into the differences between the Xbox and PSX versions of this game. I believe he came to the conclusion that the lower route with the Azagals is faster for Richter just due to lag and kind of the loading time between screens themselves. So that is an optimized route for this particular version of the game. And I mean, Talik's playing very well here.
Yeah, no, this is a solid run, especially on no resets whatsoever. It's incredible. Yeah,
so you put these you put these teams together, I should say, Rom Scout. Who do you like? Who's your pony in the race for this?
I wouldn't say I have a pony, but I would say that among recent experience, like I would certainly say if teams Richter and Maria want to have a chance at winning, they're definitely going to need these leads towards the start. So Talik definitely needs this for his team because PC tracks on the Alucard 80% run has been going hard at this lately, and he's pushing this towards the sub 17, which only 3 other runners in the world have. So he's really pushing this hard, and I think that with the consistency I've seen from his runs, both these other teams are going to need those leads like the one Talik is giving them right now.
Did you like how I threw my voice to make it sound like the StarCraft announcer there?
How about you? Do you have anyone that you're seeing as a...
So this is my take on it. I definitely feel like Team Renard has a really strong chance at this run, just with Talik and Matako on it. I also think Gravity Penguin is one of the more practiced glitchless runners. And Josh always kind of comes to play. If you were looking at kind of a dark horse in this, so Team Alucard, you look at it and you go, oh, Mecha Richter Dragon Blitz, that's a really strong combination of runners. I would say if you want to look at a group of people to look to steal this, it would be Team Belmont, Team Richter, because of 2 things. Number one, Epically Epic, when he decides to be on his game, is extremely good at this game. Ben Outen is, I think, one of the better kept secrets in the Soten community.
Well, and he is the best Richter runner, but yeah.
And lastly, probably one of the more kind of like intangible factors in this. Blacktastic is very, very well versed with pressure and performing under it from his background in the FGC. So, and also he has raced Mega Man 9 at a couple of GDQs, if I'm remembering correctly, and performed very well in those. Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting Team Maria to kind of be in the forefront, but I would not at all be surprised if Team Richter was able to clutch it out with Scavenger and Blacktastic on the back end, with the amount of experience that they have with races and marathons. So we're kind of jumping into the next category here, which is going to be Alucard all bosses.
Yeah, the next runner-up for Team Maria should be Matako. Because we're just having a little trouble switching over, but should be able to work out the kinks soon. But certainly, when we do switch over, he will have been playing. It's not going to be an instance where he's just like holding up on the other teams, as far as I'm aware. If you guys are a little bit lost as far as commentary, don't worry about it at all. We're going to be making this game as accessible as possible to you guys. It just give us a little bit of time, and you're going to hear everything that you can about this game and about these categories.
So we have Matako already well underway on his run.
He's a few minutes into the clock rush.
Do you want to kind of talk about the early game? Yeah.
Yeah. So, the beginning of the game with Alucard kind of has a gate on it, where at the 8-minute mark, you have to go past a path that opens and closes every other minute. So on odd minutes, it's closed, and on even minutes, it's open. So you can get to this point in the game fast enough that you actually get there on an odd minute and wait for the 8-minute mark. So that's the ideal situation for all of the runners of this category, is that they're going to be getting the Wolf Relic, going back and going straight to the Mist Relic as fast as possible with that path. Because even if you have to wait a full minute, it's still faster to go that way. And so he's a little lenient on execution, because a lot of the top runners for Alucard categories are probably going to have about like 20 seconds, give or take, 10 to 20 seconds of leniency. But yeah, after that, it's all going to be crazy bat movement for the most part that carries this category, along with a lot of really difficult glitches. Yeah, one thing he's doing, of course, to speed up, this is probably some of the most common speedrunning knowledge of this game. He is canceling all of his backdashes with the shield input. So if you are thinking like, wow, how has he mashed that fast on just the dash button? Well, he's actually doing 2 buttons, but it still makes it go a lot faster. So
as we can see, also Team Belmont's going to be moving into the Alucard portion of the run shortly, it seems like.
Yeah, Houseless had a very strong finish there after a rough start. So.
Oh gosh. Okay, so Team Fahrenheit Tepish or something like that is gonna have we're gonna have a little bit of time to make up there, but that's all right. So coming from your very, very extensive background in Soten, can you kind of talk about how much this route has changed as far as kind of this early game in the clock rush, from when you started to pick up the game up to this point?
Oh yeah, certainly. Well, you will be seeing coming up on Epic's screen here pretty soon the death skip, which is something that was not in the route for quite a few years until Sockfolder decided that we weren't breaking the game hard enough. So you're seeing him kind of you explain this better than me. I know you're practicing this, but yeah.
So the death skip itself is a manipulation of the camera, and what you're doing is you're forcing a level up using the neutron bomb to be able to trick the game into zoning you into the wrong side of the death cutscene room. And so what that does is, instead of spawning on the left side of the room, you spawn on the right side and just walk right through. That allows you to skip over the death cutscene and maintain access to your very, very powerful Alucard gear from the beginning of the game on.
So yeah, that's probably the biggest change that's happened in the clock rush over the last few years. And then outside of that, I would say that really it's just like paying a lot more attention to tightening your jumps and then using the wolf, because you're going to see that pretty soon here actually on Matako's end. Using the wolf is going to actually end up being faster than shield dashing for the end portion of the clock rush, because you get to keep momentum forward. You'll see the wolf dash actually gets to jump forward with a dash speed, which Alucard can't do. And then you get to that's basically gonna be it. Like, you can turn corners faster, you can jump while dashing. It adds up to a lot of time, and it actually saves up to 4 seconds for this if you can carry the wolf all the way to the clock room.
Returning to Matako's stream, the reason why we pick up the wolf for this clock rush is a very simple mechanic using the wolf. Normally you need the leap stone, the double jump, in order to dive kick, but with any transformation you can untransform, and when you untransform you're able to dive kick. That's going to allow Matako to boost into the next part of the castle on the left side of the clock room and into the Colosseum. You're going to be seeing that maybe in about 3 minutes or so on his stream as well, when he's trying to access a relic relatively early called the Fairy Card, but we'll kind of cover that a little bit more as he gets to it. Looks like Epicai's kind of reaching the final part of his part of the run, so we're going to be seeing Team Alucard kind of try and pick up the pace a little bit and catch up to the Belmonts and the Renards here.
Yeah, and certainly I would say that despite Team Alucard being behind a little bit right now, honestly, when we get to Glitchless, Dragon Blitz is probably the most consistent runner of most of these categories, actually. But like, especially for Glitchless, I've not seen anyone being able to consistently get anywhere close to a 33 or anything like that, like he can. So, yeah, I certainly would not give up hope yet for that team, especially this early on.
So Matako's kind of crushing Minotaur and Werewolf. You want to kind of talk about what's happening with that particular section of the game there?
Yeah, you'll get to see that he skipped the cutscene, and normally it expects you to not skip that cutscene and watch the whole thing, and then after that, the AI for Minotaur and Werewolf start, and they start attacking you. Since you skip the cutscene, they spawn early. It still waits on a timer for them to finish that cutscene that's not there anymore. So you just get free hits on them for like, I don't know, like 7 seconds or so if you position yourself right and don't do spells.
Matako's also getting access to a very, very important item here in the Shield Rod, which we're going to discuss in just a moment, right after this book skip here. So another utilization of the dive kick in order to gain extra height to get the Fairy Card. That Fairy Card is going to allow Mitako to break the scene with the Master Librarian and allow him to sell a garnet that is no longer in his inventory due to a glitch, and that's going to give him infinite money to get the duplicator. Very quickly, the items that he's going to be obtaining is going to be the Mana Prism, which is going to be very, very important for gaining mana and invincibility during the course of the run. He's going to get the Buffalo Star, which is very important for having a long-ranged damage source that's very, very strong. And it's going to give him access to basically anything he wants, to be completely honest. He's going to get relatively arbitrarily high amounts of money. We just saw Private Cinnamon Bun kind of go through the death skip as well. We didn't really get to see the intro for the Alucard portions of the run, which is a little unfortunate. What you need to know about that is that they do it quickly in order to gain max stats. The intro also allows them to get a heart refresh, which will be relevant in the very late game, and it gives them the neutron bomb that they need in order to do the death skip.
Yeah, and an interesting development that's happened fairly recently in the All Bosses runs is that previously we would save the Shield Rod spellcast for the Alucard Shield until later in the run, but now we do it right out of the library and also do a skip with it later as well, and it still ends up being faster. So you can just see how bosses melt with this. It's actually doing something like, I think, 255 hits 6 times, or 255 damage on 6 hits per second, somewhere around that range. So it's ridiculously fast.
It's a very, very hard-hitting move and very fast.
It's
another thing to note is it does heal your HP and give you hearts as well. Yeah. So, I mean, when it procs, you also get invincibility. Basically, you are just completely untouchable when you have this spell up. But there is kind of a downside to using the Alucard Shield, right, as far as your mana is concerned.
Yeah, there's 2 conditions that make you actually completely have to recast the shield, and that is if you run out of mana completely, or if you've had the shield out for 70 seconds or so, a little over a minute. So yeah, you just saw Mitako hit a floor skip, and he took about like 5 tries on it, I think, and that is kind of expected if people are doing this. So if somebody decided to, one of the other 2 runners decided to use a library card there, they're automatically probably gaining like 20 seconds on him, despite that skip potentially saving 10. It's a very risky skip to do, and he's a top tier runner of the game though, so you'd expect nothing less than for him to go for it, and maybe just
realistically with the strategy that he was using with map buffering, as we call it, or pause buffering, you can expect to save about 6 seconds over the most optimized escape. So yeah, I mean, with that many attempts, he is definitely losing time here, but I mean, I guess he felt comfortable enough to go for it in a relay. So you're also going to see a sweet little boost here on Matako's stream.
The clock tower is so awesome to watch now. And he can get an infinite wing smash there. I don't think we've really talked about that yet, but that's the main movement tech with the bat, is that you have the ability to, in a small frame window, not really small, it's like 20 something frame window, you're able to chain wing smashes continuously.
So we're going to see Mitaka picking up the Leap Stone. The Leap Stone unlocks some pretty interesting movement techniques here. I mean, I guess we could kind of talk about that a little bit here. As you see inside of kind of the transition CD rooms, or loading rooms as we call them, you're going to see the Alucard runners doing a dive kick into turning into the bats. This is called a bat kick. You're also going to be seeing the runners sometimes do a backdash into bat. The most important thing to note here is that the bat tends to maintain horizontal momentum, and because of that, you can do some interesting movement tech by turning into the bat during various forms of fast movement horizontally. You're also going to be seeing the wing smash, which if you'd like to kind of talk about some of the difficulties and challenges associated with using the wing smash effectively, I'm sure people would love to hear it, Ram.
Yeah, aside from what we were mentioning with chaining infinite wing smashes, there's also trying to position wing smashes with architecture in the castle so that you can get a huge momentum boost up or down, and you're actually going to see it on the way to All Rocks coming up. Going off that staircase, in addition to clipping the ceiling on the way up, that gave a huge vertical momentum boost. And being able to do all that sequence in one wing smash is actually really hard, because you aren't naturally supposed to be able to chain them with direction changes in the first place. Like, they definitely would have never expected that.
So we're going to get to see what Epic decides to do as far as his approach to the library here. I'm guessing he's going to library card, same for Private Sim and Bun, but who knows, maybe Epic's been practicing here.
Oh, he's been practicing, my friend. All right. Well,
all right.
Same story as with Mitaka. He can gain a huge amount of first tries there, and he does. So
nice.
that definitely made up a huge gap. Still quite a ways to go, obviously, but I mean, even if he wins this leg of the race, that is a huge boost for his team.
Well, Mitaka kind of unable to get another floor clip to be able to skip a little bit of vertical traversal there, but that's all right. Kind of to be expected. You're also going to be seeing on Mitaka's stream another one of those floor clips that were mentioned with the wolf. So an interesting thing regarding floor clips, there has been some setups that have been developed for it, but it is essentially a sub-pixel and double frame perfect trip. So what that means is that the runner has to hit two 1/60th of a second frame windows, and also they have to be on the right positioning. If they don't hit those two very, very precise timing windows and be on the right positioning, they will not make it into the floor. Mitaka takes a second try to get in it. That's still quite fast. That particular skip skips about 30 seconds of content, so he's still well ahead of doing it the intended way. And he's going to make his way over to Succubus.
Yeah, and it skips having to hit the switch to open the blue door, or the floor in this case, so that the blue door has the switch. Okay, there we go. I remember. See, I've skipped it so much, I forgot what was in the game. But so it does skip a huge amount, and That was another thing that Sockfolder actually developed the setup for. He's actually been just a huge influence on glitch setup development for this game. Like, nobody was really pause buffering until he started looking into that. Another thing actually to note about that, I don't think we touched on this really, but another small optimization that you'll see a lot of runners do through this run is the experience route. So level ups in this game happen because based on a curved experience, and if you get like 5 level ups from one enemy that's many levels higher above you, that's the same level up animation as getting 1 level up. So they will sometimes go out of their way to kill an enemy or two that might look like it wastes time, but every single one of those level up animations is over 2 seconds. So cutting out as many of those as possible is really key, and that's something that Talig Zealot, who absolutely crushed the Richter part of the race, developed for Alucard.
Coming up on Epically Epic stream, we're going to be seeing what's known as... It used to be called the cow skip, but it's basically the Olrock's statue skip, if you can get past this ruthless bat. This is kind of an extension of the Royal Chapel's doors being completely broken. And because of that, freezing the screen during screen transitions here is going to allow him to skip over the barrier that locks him out of the Olrock's chamber. We're also going to have Private Cinnamon Bun doing his fairy card skip. He's going to bounce off the book. That's actually quite unfortunate because he has no mana to be able to do this part of the run. I'm actually very interested to see if he's going to forego getting the fairy card immediately and go instead for the bat, which is technically a much faster route if you end up running short on mana, but we'll have to see what he decides to do. Matako's moving his way very quickly throughout the rest of the run. He's already making his way towards Grand Falloon.
Very strong run with all of his movement. It's pretty on point right now.
And I mean, it may seem like a really big time loss here as far as Team Alucard is concerned, but remember there are still plenty of Alucard categories where that book jump will be an issue.
Oh man, he's going for
Matako going for the Catacombs Wolf Clip.
Only once though, but yeah, that one actually only saves about 3 seconds if you hit it, and it's just as hard as any of the other ones. And you can't really buffer it because the space is too small. So yeah, that's just like one of those insanely hard tricks that you're only going for if you're really confident or you're pretty much going for a record.
I mean, I didn't want to say anything because, you know, we don't want to influence this race as mere commentators, but Matako's actually made a very key mistake in not picking up the gold ring. That's going to make it so that he's not able to pass Richter, right? That's how it works?
Yeah, I guess he's going to have to restart the whole run because I haven't seen him save, right? So, yeah, we do have quite a few ways in this game to skip Richter. And if you're wondering about how that relates to all bosses not fighting Richter, we base the category off the event listing for bosses. There's actually a menu that shows which bosses are in the game, so we're just basing the category on that. Conveniently, it lets you skip Richter, and the way they're going to be doing this is by clipping at just the right angle with the wolf into an open tile in the wall, and it skips a trigger that's essentially a straight vertical line that goes under that wall, but not in the switch part of it. So if you can avoid that bottom part of the wall entirely where the trigger is, then you can do it. And it looks like got second try. That's still very good. Oh my goodness, what was he trying to do there?
So a couple things to cover. Epic actually did a really good job with his underground cavern skip, so he got that first try. Also of note with Matako for the Richter skip that he attempted, if you do mess up your positioning, you can actually soft lock the game there.
Yeah, I think he realized he had messed up his positioning, so
and just forgoed it.
Yeah, so he decided to switch into mist there, because he knew then that would force him into the cutscene as human Alucard and not move him forward far enough that he could be in that potential soft lock position. The game would automatically walk him to the teleporter. So even though I was freaking out there. That was actually a very good save on his part, just realizing he had messed up and accounted for the mistake.
No comment. So we're also going to see on Epically Epic screen, you're going to see him go for a Scylla clip. This is using the door that spawns with Scylla to block off the back chamber. And you actually spawn or keep the door from spawning and then respawn it by re-entering the room in such a way that you get pushed into the floor. That bypasses having to go through the previous 2 rooms. And he did just fine on that. That's a pretty simple skip, but something that is, something that's very, very much expected of these runners at this level that they're playing at.
Oh, here's some of that nice wing smashing movement for Matako that we were talking about earlier with having to switch directions multiple times in the same wing smash chain. That's much, much more difficult than he just made it look.
Yeah, Private Cinnabon actually had a really, really strong clock tower as well. He's also going to go for the gear boost there. And I'm kind of interested how he's going to take the Pendulum Room. He actually gets through the gap, but he does get the boost backwards. That's actually not as bad as you would think. Even getting the boost backwards there is still faster than the previous strategy for that particular room, so still quite good. So we've been kind of keeping around one of the other relics that has been picked up inside of the all bosses, which is the gravity boots. If you see Alucard move up and down very quickly with kind of a whitish blue streak behind him, that is the gravity boots at play. While the bat is very, very good at horizontal momentum, it does lack very much inside of just moving straight up or straight down. And Gravity Boots helps with the upward portion of that. As mentioned before, Gravity Boots allows you to keep your bat allows you to keep your horizontal momentum. And when you do a diagonal Gravity Boot, it allows you to cut some very, very interesting and powerful angles in some of the reverse castle, as you're seeing on Matako's stream right now. The next couple of rooms are actually going to be highly contingent on that diagonal gravity boot into bat to be able to navigate them very, very quickly.
Yeah, and he's also... the positioning for that gravity boot there is so tight that he actually needed to do a very subtle thing with his mistransformation where he double tapped it at a specific rhythm. Think of similar to like short charging in Super Metroid or something as far as the inputs you're doing. And he made it so that the mistransformation cut itself in half for the length. And he was able to get himself in between those 2 walls on the side for the next gravity boot as a result. I love the very subtle movement optimizations you can do like that all over the place in Alucard all bosses.
Yeah, I should mention that, as I mentioned, the all bosses and any percent runs for Alucard, you're not really worried about dying, but there are so many little things that you can do that set you apart from other runners that are just... It's very much one of those categories that if you aren't necessarily as well versed in Soten, you won't learn to appreciate some of the very, very subtle things that happen inside of it. And, like, those are the things that I really enjoy. Like, the bat room that Matako is actually inside right now is actually a terrible room to go through unless you practiced it extensively, this whole climb. And Matako's just nailing it right now.
Oh, yeah, this is
fantastic looking.
Yeah, other than that last one. So that bonk he did right at the end there, you could do that on any of those ledges on the way up. It's all very tight positioning the whole way. So the fact he only got 1 bonk in this entire sequence so far is amazing. And this is a pretty hard wing smash chain to keep. You can see he dropped it there. Part of the reason for that is because every time you go through a screen transition or get a level up, it actually resets your input for the wing smash. So if you're towards the end of like that 20 frame window, when you get a level up, it's pretty much impossible to start, all the inputs you need for the rest of it.
That's a big part of racing this game as well, right, Rom? Is when you make, and racing in general, is when you make a mistake, you need to understand that you made the mistake and then adjust accordingly, right? And you've been in
Yes.
quite a few of Soten races or just races in general inside the speedrunning community during your long tenure. Can you kind of talk about some of the more mental fortitude you need and some of the adjustments you make as a racer when
Yes.
you are in these high stake situations?
Yeah, I mean it can definitely get tilting when you make a big mistake, but on every single mistake you make, there's always a fastest backup you can do at any given time, right? So really preparing for races is definitely making sure to get the best consistent time you can on the game and not necessarily always going for your PB. Because it's easy enough to reset when you make a mistake, but when you have to have the fastest backup possible off the top of your head for anything that happens, like that takes way more skill, I think. It just takes way more knowledge of the overall run. So it's just yeah, you can certainly see Matako is incredibly versed in doing that. With the Richter skip mess up, I would have expected most runners to probably soft block at that point, and he avoided it. He knew exactly how to like go straight into backdash into bat for the wing smash after the level up. So yeah, he's definitely very confident in everything he's doing, even when he messes up.
Private Cinnabon also managed to get a very, very early cavern skip as well, and I believe he used the library card in order to escape the library as well. So,
yeah,
in pure strats, like just strategies, I mean, Epic and Private Cinnabon are actually executing their strategies a little bit better than Matako. But the devil really is in the details with these types of runs. As I mentioned, like even though Matako might have had some issues getting that initial caverns clip and his library clip to escape the library, it's just he is so strong in other aspects of the game that he's able to just sit here and front slide while Akmodon is turning into ash. So I mean, like even if you lose significant portions of time, it's the entirety of a run, right?
Yeah, and he's also probably just has a little tighter movement optimization on everything. Like the double mist we were talking about earlier, that's probably something that you might see other runners lose like a few more frames on than he does. Or starting up the wing smashes. That's honestly a big time discrepancy between runners. It's just like, all right, once like you can see Private Cinnamon Bun there took an extra like half second to start his wing smash. That's something you'll see less from Matako. It just makes a huge difference over the course of the run. So even missing that library clip like 5 times isn't going to be the end of the world for him.
So I guess
frogs are terrifying, by the way. I just want to put that out there.
I'm waiting for Epic's approach on the bat rim here.
He has chosen to hellfire the frogs. I don't blame him for it.
So I guess we should mention just very briefly, the Xbox version of this game does have a couple of differences from PSX. Mainly inside the caverns and reverse caverns. Both frogs in the normal caverns and rock knights in the reverse caverns can have disjointed hitboxes. That allows them to hit you even when you are far away from the visible sprite. That could potentially be very, very relevant in the next category coming up in Richter All Bosses. Matako with actually the fast Beelzebub strat there, which is very, very nice. I suck at that strat personally, so it's always very cool to see somebody excel at it. Matako's going to be kind of making his way towards the relic skip. What you need to know about the relic skip is the game intends for you to pick up relics from the sick bitterfly. So what you need to know about the relic skip is the game intends for you in the second castle to pick up a certain number of relics from the bosses. Those relics allow you to open up the final chamber of the game. However, even though we kill all the bosses, it is actually faster to use the relic skip to skip the door opening animation. It's a very similar process to how the death skip works. We are tricking the camera into allowing us to spawn in a different part of the screen inside of the save room. After that, Matako's going to turn into a bat, and that's going to allow him to fly in the ceiling and bypass the door opening trigger and everything else to be able to get into the final save room. It's one of those things that, again, was kind of revolutionized more by Sockfolder. But Soten really is kind of a community effort in order to break this game all over the place. Mitako kind of stumbling a little bit on that final chamber with Shaft. But as you're going to see, the Alucard shield kind of does a number on the final 2 bosses of the game. And Team Renard is going to be well on their way into Richter all bosses shortly. All right, so looking at the other things inside of the run, Private Cinnabon is getting very close to finishing up the first castle. And Epically Epic is a fair distance inside of the second castle here. He's about halfway. He's going to be making his way to Medusa soon enough.
Trouble the soul of my mother no more. How?
So other things to mention about Wing Smash. Romscott had mentioned that a big part of using Wing Smash is using the terrain to your advantage. That doesn't necessarily always mean also following the terrain. Sometimes you will use the terrain in very, very subtle ways in order to get very slight boosts in height or positioning in general. And it's very, very difficult to spot to somebody that doesn't watch them or watch these runs quite as often. But it is very, very prevalent to those who have kind of studied the game and really looked into the deeper mechanics of it. So Epic making his way up to the CV triplets.
Yeah, that's a pretty good name. Yeah, the Imperum is actually like pretty terrifying, especially for newer runners of the game. Like Epic's obviously not going to have much of a problem with it, but I think that when starting out runs, that's definitely like if you're too slow on wing smashes, like even a little bit, then you're just going to get destroyed in that room. So that and the Minotaurs as well. Like this whole section can be a little scary until you're incredibly comfortable with the game. And now we have Private Cinnamon Bun making it into the second castle. That's a very clean Richter skip on his part. It did take a few tries, but once he actually got through there, he got the full wing smash into the warp.
So we're gonna have Mecha. I believe it's. Is it
yeah.
Mecha
So.
Richter? Or no, it's not Mecha Richter. Who's our?
Talic Zealot is actually gonna. Both Richter categories for his team. Part of the reason for this is just because we had to get a backup. We had some issues, but that's fine. We do have one runner doing 2 categories for their team, but it is going to be a little interesting because he has to play on the slower version of the game than the other 2 are going to be. But overall, I think that this is fine. You'll see him do a little more lag management.
It's gonna be fine until Ben gets on.
Yeah, Ben might single-handedly catch up. Mecha as well. I saw him do some very strong practice runs today.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, something that I did see is the Brazilian community actually had a Alucard any % race as well on Speedruns Brazil. So shout outs to them and Sakura Freak for doing commentary for their runs as well.
Yeah, the Brazilian community has actually been a huge part of glitch finding in Soten for, I'd say, as long as that hobby has existed, as far as I can tell. The Brazilians and Brazilians and then Japanese runners have both contributed a lot to the glitch hunting in the game, and just finding a lot of stuff that you see with like heart refreshes being used to get out of bounds, and Richter when he can. You might see an out of bounds thing once in a while from him, but if anyone's gonna go for it in all bosses, it'll be Ben. But stuff like that is just something that the international communities contributed a lot to, just as much as North America.
Shoutouts to World Beyond the Walls for their continued
World Beyond Walls,
glitch
yeah.
finding.
Just in case you're wondering, there is, of course, well known that the inbounds map in total for Symphony of the Night is 200.6% if you find all the secret rooms. But if you find all the secret rooms that are well beyond the normal boundaries of the map, they're up to 453%. So that's the kind of work that World Beyond Walls does.
Yeah, a lot of very, very dedicated people, and I really do mean that when you need to do like 1,300 heart refreshes.
Yeah, just sit there with heart refresh, and they do it on console too. They don't just like do like task scripts and everything for them. They actually, it's a big deal to them to get that save file with that huge percentage on their console. So, all right, so it looks like Epic has finished Alucard all bosses, which means that, as we're just alluding to, Ben Outen is up for his team, Team Richter, and this is going to be quite a treat. All of these runners in Richter all bosses are just amazing.
So I don't want to hype up anything, but I think even though he made an appearance at a GDQ, I think Ben is still probably one of the best kept secrets in Symphony of the Night. This guy is quite good at basically any category he touches. So
yeah, I mean, just
I'm
take a look
expecting
at
good
the
things from him.
take a look at the Soten leaderboard on speedrun.com sometime. Like, you're gonna see him top 5 or even better in pretty much everything. I don't think there's a category where that's not the case. And that's certainly not something you can say like across the board. Like, to be good at Richter and Alucard both at the level he is just ridiculous.
Talik's having a pretty strong castle here, by the way. We've been kind of staying away from it and looking more at the Alucard runners here, but Talik's been really doing quite well throughout this. Can you talk about a little bit more of the challenges? We've discussed kind of the basic movement options that Richter has, but what are some of the challenges that are a little bit more unique to the all bosses route for him?
You'll actually see an optimization right here that he's going to attempt. You cancel the Hydrastorm cast with the door closing on this boss. That's certainly something you'd never see, and it allows him to throw Holy Water faster and then insta-kill Crossamon, basically. So stuff like that is unique to this category. Obviously the big thing with Richter is health management, and you saw from the 80% runs that the health management for Richter is if you get hit, you die. In this one, you do beat enough bosses and go around enough of the castle that you can actually collect health ups if you choose to. So you can have a little more risk-reward management as opposed to 80%, which it's actually just a huge waste of time to get any health ups, which does increase your max HP. But yeah, I imagine most of these runners here will be not collecting many of those, if any. So it'll be a really risky run. But I have to imagine that, given that Talik probably didn't know he was running this category until like 15 minutes ago, that you might see him pick up a couple, and I wouldn't blame him. Another cool thing is that there's actually not going to be more sub-weapon use, especially on Talik's end, because Hydrastorm is really laggy. So you're actually going to see him use like the knife sub-weapon. You're going to see him use the axe sub-weapon in a few places. There's quite a good variety compared to just the Hydrastorm spam you would have seen in the 80% run. So that's also an interesting part, that you have to get in different positions for every boss. You have to still never miss an air slash, but like positioning going into boss fights matters a lot more.
I mean, you're certainly welcome to miss an air slash if you want to die instantly.
But yeah, you can see that the lag there, if he had cast Hydrostorm, like you saw from the last couple bosses, he used Hydrostorm on. It just really slows down the game. But the knife sub weapon is a lot better about that. And so, yeah, like we mentioned before, from the first race, we probably will see runners hit up the saves once in a while if they lack confidence in any part of the run. Which, even if you are the best Richter all bosses runners in the world, there's a couple things that people still fear once in a while. Like there's a couple things people expect, like, all right, I'll probably get a reset here once in a while. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't blame anyone for using the saves.
I believe I have seen exactly 2 runners do a all bosses marathon run without dying.
Yeah, it's
and
a rarity.
It would be almost 2 runners that did an 80% as well, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Richter is an extremely brutal category. Once again, we see the damage stack. A little bit of a more minor one with Ben there on Karasamon, but a little bit. Helps out here and there. Something interesting about Akmadon on Private Cinnabon's stream. Akmadon has a very backloaded hitbox, so it's important to get in really deep with that shield. Nice AI loop there by Talik Zealot to defeat Doppelganger.
And yeah, you can see how much faster the Xbox version is than PlayStation just by the fact Ben's already in Cold Tower and exiting it. That's absolutely crazy ground that was made up.
Yeah, we actually saw pretty close to simultaneous loading screens there between Talik and Ben as well. So you really get to see, using the Xbox version of the game, you will gain, potentially 2 seconds pretty much every CD loading screen. So that's pretty big gains over the course of the game.
So some of the really subtle things, like Ben is, unarguably the best runner of this category in the world. And some things you're going to see him doing that you probably won't see these other 2 runners nailing quite as much as him is he's going to do very tiny little slide kicks that go like, it looks like a minuscule distance into an enemy and then do the backflip into air slash off of that. He's probably gaining like that off that Fleaman. He probably just gained like, I don't know, 1/5 of a second on that at most. But he's going to be doing that all over the place. So it really does add up to something like, 15 seconds over the course of the run over a runner who isn't doing those specific little slide kicks.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Outen coming from a very, very strong background in the Alucard category and basically decided to drop it and is now, I would say, almost exclusively a Richter runner, and he's really kind of applied that dedication that he took to the Alucard category to the Richter category as well.
Yeah, he actually had the Alucard 80% record at one point with when it was 17:10, and that was like I think 5 seconds faster than the record at the time. So like, yeah, absolutely ridiculous what he's done in all categories.
Interesting choice by Talik. He decides not to go for the Silazep. I guess he had known that maybe his positioning was a bit off and decided to go the other way instead. Yeah,
there actually is a risk with soft locking as well. So if your positioning's off and if you feel like your timing is off, then it is very possible, at least with Richter, to soft lock. Obviously with Alucard, if for some reason something went wrong, you could library card as a worst case, but it'd be a much bigger loss of time for Richter, I'd say. Alright, so Private Cinnamon Bun's coming up to the end of his all bosses run. Let's see how he does on the final skip.
So coming from, again, I mean, I keep mentioning it, but you are very much probably the most, actually definitely the most active Soten runner that's kind of an old boy in the community. What's it been like to kind of see the development of this game and people kind of come in and out of Soten running for all the categories, really?
Yeah, it's been exciting. Like, when I started, there's maybe 2 or 3 people that people just saw as like gods that nobody else could really compete with, right? And so there wasn't as much collaboration on like optimizing strats, but now with more strat sharing and more research done by a variety of people, like anyone feels they can learn the run and compete with it, which is really awesome to see. Like you get a ton of optimization and just like the things we were talking about, like that subtle movement that nobody really thought about before, because like if you are 2 minutes ahead of your next opponent, like what do you care if you gain a second here or there, right? But once everybody started putting in that effort collectively to optimize those small things that nobody really cared about, I think Ben just got an amazing glitched hitbox there from a frog. But yeah, it's just made it a lot more exciting to watch every single category in the game now as opposed to before. But yeah, something that happened.
We just saw Talik actually pick up the axe sub weapon. Coming into the catacombs. You want to talk a little bit about how that will be impactful coming up in the next boss?
Yeah, so he again, this is more of a lag reduction thing, but also it's for heart management because casting axe is less hearts cost than casting Hydrastorm, which is another huge part of the run. Is just like making sure you minimize the number of heart pickups you're getting. Oh, he's even saving here. So the reason he's probably saving here is because you actually have to, for the strat, lose about half your health to pull it off. You have to deliberately take a damage boost as Grand Falloon or Legion spawns, and then you're going to be casting the axe with perfect timing after that. So you have to get... Oh, yeah, there we go. So all that right there with the air slash timing, taking the damage in the middle, and then like coming up with the axe, like that's all just very specific positioning, and it's still faster than casting Hydrastorm with that giant thing of bodies on screen.
So, Private Cinnamon Bun having a little bit of issues with the relic skip, but he's finally well on his way to getting to track. So, our team Alucard, Richter, all bosses runner is going to be starting up very, very soon as well. So, kind of coming from my background, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is just the type of strats that people didn't think were going to get kind of implemented into the run, you know, just eventually hitting the mainstream. I actually produced a series of private videos on YouTube, and I believe the playlist was called Stupid Things That No One Will Ever Do, But They Will Eventually, involving the clock tower. And many of those strats inside of the clock tower are actually actively being used now. So it's kind of an interesting take when you've seen the development of this run over 6 months, over a year, just seeing how far people are willing to push the category.
Yeah, and I think the last thing we still have to do that is among those really stupid things is in the any percent run with using the wolf all the way through the library to Lesser Demon, and then also cutting another level up out of the second castle. It's that there's still some crazy stuff left in this game that is like, theoretically you save 2 seconds if you can do the hardest inputs known to man, but you know, eventually I think someone will do those. Or cut another cycle off the clock rush. One of those two things. But I do think the possibilities for this game are still endless and haven't really been reached, despite the fact we can beat the game in under 10 minutes if we want to by just pulling up the credits in the menu, or beating all the bosses in half an hour, whatever. I think there's still a lot to discover with this. I mean, I'm gonna probably compare this game to Super Metroid quite a bit, because not only do the runs kind of have a similar feel with a big focus on very technical inputs on a 2D platformer, but also it's the same story on both communities. Like, oh, this run's done. Well, 2 years later, well, this run's done again. Nope, there's always a new route you can make. there's always more tricks you can think of. These games are just so deep, it's ridiculous.
I'm going to have to talk to Talik actually at some point after this run. I don't know if it was route unfamiliarity or he tried to do a particular strategy, but you are unable to uppercut through the transition there inside the reverse keep, and he did it a couple times. It's possible what he was trying to do was jump after it in order to bypass the kind of small wall.
That would have been a very tight window, but I think it is possible.
But I'll kind of have to pick his brain about that afterwards. So we're well on our way with all of our Richter runners as well now. Mecha Richter well into his... So the clock rush, well, it's 8 minutes on Alucard. Maybe, just possibly, Richter can do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's... I think I've seen some players get there with like 130s, like in that range before, so they get to farm hearts for a while.
Yeah, well, Richter any percent is very, very strict in just moving as fast as you can. If you're very, very good at Alucard or at Richter all bosses, sorry, I keep making the mistake. But if you're very good at Richter all bosses, you can pick up 3 life max ups and I believe 2 heart max ups extra. I guess we can kind of talk about that very briefly, since we're going to be wrapping up Richter here soon enough. If you pick up HP max ups with Richter, it gives you full health, but also it does increase your max health very slightly. This can be relevant if you pick up enough of them, but oftentimes if you're just trying to rush from one boss to the next, you won't see too much impact. It's still going to be a 1 to 4 hit affair for Richter throughout the course of the run. Heart max ups give Richter 30 hearts, I believe, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Which is basically going to give you about 2 item crashes.
So Ben is taking the lead for his team, but he's also on one of the scariest bosses in the run because you actually have a pretty tight window here to go with that whip into an air slash because of Doppelganger's invincibility frames, but he nails it, like cool as could be.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's super easy. All they do is just cheat with their air slashing and their whipping. Yeah, Doppelganger 40 is actually extremely dangerous on Richter because even though it is a simplistic fight strategy-wise, if you mess up on the execution at all, you can easily die.
Yeah, because Alucard has... Oh my god! Oh, Talik's having some sub-weapon issues right now. But I believe he does. He does need to keep the knife till after Galamoth, so he did manage to get through that. But yeah, it's it's pretty crazy just how hard these strats actually are when you try them. Like. Probably, I would even recommend to someone, like, if you just want to see how hard this is, just try loading up Richter mode and beat all the bosses in one playthrough, see how it goes.
I would say one of the best ways to explain it to a layman, perhaps somebody that's familiar with the fighting game community in particular. Yeah. If you can go into training mode, like just straight practice mode, throw 10 fireballs in a row without making any mistakes. Like one after the other as soon as you can. Now do it 30 times. If you missed it at all during those 30 times, you just died. It's like, it seems very easy to do a single one of these motions, whether it be a Richter air slash or an Alucard wing smash. But the fact that you need to do these consistently throughout the course of the run or face major repercussions is really what makes these categories as dangerous as they are. Talik's having a pretty strong Doppel 40 fight as well there. He had to actually make a slight adjustment there as he cornered Doppelganger. If you corner Doppelganger, he will turn into Bat and try to wing smash out of the corner. So he had to do a subtle repositioning there.
Oh man, what a hit by that Jack of Bones. I have rarely seen them play that well before. I mean that's a huge deal though. Just like getting hit by an enemy unexpectedly, that you can see how much health that can take. Although I think that Talek has been grabbing a few extra health up, so certainly not run ending at this point.
Interesting thing about Richter, he does not need to kill the death boss, so Talek can kind of make his way straight through there.
Yeah, that is another interesting thing. Actually, you'll see it in when we get to that, even though I guess she's doing 80%, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, all of the bosses that have cutscenes attached to them, in order to fight them other than Shaft, they're just cut from these extra modes. So Dracula, you don't fight him. You don't fight Minotaur and Werewolf. You don't fight Succubus. And yeah, it's just, you don't fight Death. So quite a few bosses are cut off, which is part of the reason, well, very small reason, but part of the reason why the run ends up being so much shorter than the Alucard run.
So if I have to hazard, Ben is considerably far ahead here inside of Richter all bosses. And I'm pretty sure if he paused right now, he's totally ahead on points, which is the most important metric when we're talking about speedruns. Mecha Richter is also doing... So, like, here's the thing that's funny, too. Mecha Richter is actually playing really well. And Talek, especially given the platform he's playing on...
Ben just did, like, Air Slash, and then something we didn't mention to Richter mode is that when you when you whip in the right frame window coming off a ledge, you launch much further ahead. So he was able to do a perfect Air Slash into slide kick and then whip, and then it just like perfectly went over that ledge that you normally would have to hit before going towards Aquanon. That's just something that's beautiful and you won't see from very many runners.
Yeah, very subtle things that you can pick up in Richter that, like, we make it a very cut and dry subject as far as, like, just Air Slash a billion times, right? But there are very, very subtle mechanic things and very much more importantly, positional things that you have to be aware of and work on. Talek Zealot, right as I was about to give him praise, gets completely smoked by Galamoth there. I know he made a save at Grand Falloon. I do not know if he made a save after that.
I believe he made at least one in Second Castle? Reverse Caverns, before Doppelganger, I think.
Okay, so
before or after Doppelganger.
That is a time loss, a considerable time loss, but not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. He also needed to fight his natural inclinations there a little bit as far as resetting. So... I mean, Ben is crushing this. Talek, before that death also, Talek was having a very, very good run for, like, a PlayStation Richter all bosses. And he's having a really good Alucard doppelganger fight here as well.
Yeah, and, I mean, with Ben, it's just another example of what we were talking about when we were watching Taco Alucard. Is like, when Ben gets hit, he goes right into the next move. You don't see him hesitate. You don't see him get worried about his health and kind of like fumble around and dash around the screen to reposition himself. He just goes right into the next slide kick into Air Slash. Like, he's ready. So just the amount of confidence he has in this category is incredible. So coming up after Ben on his team is going to be Call Me Zero doing Glitchless. A newer Glitchless runner. He just started earlier this year and already has a very competitive time. So yeah, him and I did talk about them a little bit earlier, but him and PC Tracks are both like newer runners that have just really gone to that next level extremely fast, and I'm completely excited to see just what they have to offer for this race.
Yeah, I am actually pretty interested to see how they're going to perform as well, particularly Zero. I haven't seen him too often on. I've definitely seen with PC Tracks has been kind of pushing inside of his stream as well. But again, just there's something to be said about having that race experience, that ability to basically continue on during a marathon setting. And I think that's going to be very crucial in deciding perhaps the later portions of this relay race. All right, Ben going for the sick axe crash, and he's going to finish up Shaft on his end.
Yeah, and
very good run on Ben's end.
Yeah, Ben was just amazing. Like I didn't see the time Oz run right there, but I'm gonna take a wild guess. That was definitely within a minute of the world record, which on a Richter all bosses run that you have to worry about health management anytime you get hit. Like that's just incredible. But yeah, coming up next, as I said, is Zero is going to be doing a run for Team Richter. So Glitchless is quite a bit different than any other Alucard category.
So I guess we can very, very briefly talk about Glitchless is maybe not 100% glitchless. The main purpose of Glitchless is we try to prohibit glitches that you are in control of stopping. But you may see a glitch here or there that is not really in control of the runners. So, don't be surprised if you see an MP glitch here or there, or
so the biggest example for sure is that there is a glitch where if you just happened, it's very hard to control because the frame windows for the MP refill are inconsistent. So sometimes you will see if you grab a relic, get a level up, or get like a health up or something on the same frame that an MP bar is choosing to refill, it'll extend that refill for the entirety of that animation. So you basically get full MP out of it in most cases. But it's pretty hard to route that into this, especially reliably. So it's allowed because it can accidentally happen, but very few people have really tried to push it into the route. And then the other thing, like you mentioned, is the damage stacking with Richter in the intro. That's, you throw a holy water, I guess you've glitched the game, whatever.
So some of the differences with the glitches category, we do not gain access to the Alucard gear. You're noticing Zero has chosen not to equip any of the weapons. The Alucard unarmed attack, his punch, is quite strong actually. It's very fast, and it has 2 hitboxes, one around the elbow, I would say, and one on the fist itself. So each individual punch can hit twice. In addition to that, there is an unarmed specific attack that looks like a flying kick that you can do that has like quite strong hitbox as well. Using the intense speed of the punching animation, we're able to do far more damage than we could with any of the early weapons inside of the game. And you would need to spend time equipping them. So you're going to see that abused quite a bit. You're also going to see him use the Tetra Spirit spell available to Alucard to be able to deal with Slogger and Gaibon here. Referring to Call Me Zero's stream here.
Yeah, and Clock Rush, as we're talking about before bosses run, you do look to get under 8 minutes still, but it's not going to be as hard of a requirement for most runners in this category because having to do it without the extra Alucard gear, it makes it way more difficult. So ultimately, I think the goal for all of these runners, though, is finishing the Clock Rush in under 9 minutes, so that they do not have to wait that additional minute on just standing there. Anytime they can get there with the clock open or under the 8-minute mark is ideal for them.
Coming from your background, Ram, as somebody who has done the 8-minute Clock Rush pre-death skip, how much more effort do you need to put into your play in order to be able to make that critical threshold of 8 minutes?
Oh, geez, yeah. I would. It's huge. It's definitely noticeable. I think, if for a current runner you could watch that does this category, you can see Dragon Blitz on in any percent attempt, he might get to Clock Rush at like 720, 725 maybe, and just be totally chill about it and just be waiting for the additional time. He's happy with like a 755 on Glitchless. Like, he had to execute really well to get that. Like, 750 is probably what he's topping out at, and that's really the kind of window you're looking at. Like, shield dashing matters way more in this category. Most categories I talk about how, like, shield dashing isn't the biggest deal. Like, there's much more movement optimization to worry about than that, and that's true, but it's certainly matters more in Glitchless. Oh, you can see glitched hitboxes from Mechas.
I was gonna say casual Doppel 40 from Mecha there, and then glitched hitboxes.
But yeah, so because there's MP management in this run, since you're not going to be getting the duplicator with the shop glitch, you're going to be doing stuff like having to cut your wing smash chain short, just so you have enough MP to do the biggest time saver ones that matter. You're going to be seeing a lot more shield dashing, something that we haven't really seen yet up to this point, called front sliding once they get double jump, and that movement matters a lot more in this category.
So something that Talix, who is also very, very prominent as far as kind of education for new runners and old runners really of this game, something that he harps on a lot regarding shield dashing is it is very, very important to realize that Saturn is not a game about mashing. Yes, if you can get a very, very strong shield dash, it can help your run. What is way, way, way more important is what I call transitional movement. It is how high are you jumping? Are you jumping just enough to land on the platform, or are you jumping as high as possible? How fast do you turn to attack enemies when you need to do combat and then get back to your shield dashing? Do you stutter as you shield dash? These things are much, much more important for facilitating a much faster clock rush than how fast you can press 2 buttons. The best runners you may see don't have the fastest shield dashing. They aren't as fast as, say, like Ben or Rom or Dragon Blitz, but they still manage to get these very, very consistent sub-8 times, and that's all due to this movement that you maybe don't pay as much attention to. We're seeing Zero do a wolf jump, which we haven't really touched on as much. The wolf has very, very skewed jumping mechanics when going up slopes. That allows Zero to get access to the garnet earlier than intended. In the other routes, that was used to duplicate to gain relatively infinite money, but in the glitchless category, that's still going to be used to gain vast quantities of money than you would normally have at this point in the game.
Yeah, and I do want to touch again on what you're talking about, transitional movement. Like, another big thing about optimizing just your basic movement, even with shield dashing, rhythm matters much more than the mashing speed. Like, if you are mashing really fast, but you end up having like a stutter, like even once in a while, maybe like 1 out of every 20 dashes is a stutter, you're going slower than someone who's just going to be like rocking their thumb back and forth at a casual pace and not messing any of the inputs up. Wow, Talik really cut it close on the air slash. That Guardian Sword would have killed him. I almost guarantee you. It doesn't matter what your health is at that point. That was incredibly tight. And on Zero's end in the glitchless run, just finished the clock rush, got there with a pretty strong time, and electing to go with the health grab because, you saw them. They're still gonna abuse the thing that we were talking about earlier with Minotaur, where you start attacking them before their AI, but this category is a lot more like the Richter ones in that if you mess up an input during a boss fight, that could actually mean you die if you are not reacting perfectly to it. So grabbing a couple health ups here and there to like give yourself a little insurance on those bosses, certainly not a bad decision.
Yeah, this is definitely the glitchless category for Alucard is definitely a category where you are able to die. We're going to see a slightly different version of the Minotaur Werewolf fight for Karmi Zero. He's going to move up and try to incapacitate Minotaur as soon as possible, then use the Tetra Spirit spell's invincibility frames to have Werewolf pass through him. He didn't quite get it there, but he was still able to dodge the charge. That's going to result in less damage overall, so he's got to play this a little bit more safely. He's going to use a couple summon spirits to finish out the fight. I can't blame him on that.
Very wise choice. Good recovery there, and it also means that in order to execute the route, probably going to have to hit up the save in the Colosseum before doing the Soul Steal, but honestly, in the grand scheme of things, that's a couple seconds. It'll look like a big loss with the save animation, but everybody has to visit a few saves in this route to recover MP. Almost forgot to hit the switch there.
Yeah. He's actually going to be totally fine on MP for this.
Okay. I thought he had cast more Summon Spirits than that. My bad.
Yeah, Summon Spirits pretty cheap on mana and very effective.
Very important. He grabbed the 1,000 money bag there. All of those money bags are going to make a difference in this route. He wants to get mana prisms and library cards from these shop trips, in addition to the Jewel of Open, which is needed for progress. And I should mention also about the Iron Shield, which is going to be the main offense for this run. If you want to touch a little more on that.
It's a little bit of a clown fiesta there with menuing, but we got it done. Really quickly before that, mentioning that we do not need to pick up the fairy card here, as it's only necessary for the shop glitch, so Zero's going to be heading immediately to Lesser Demon. So the shield rod that we had mentioned previously in all bosses has a different effect for each shield inside of the game. For the purposes of glitchless, Iron Shield is the cheapest to be able to get with the most abusive ability. It is going to allow the runners to cast a spell which occupies huge amounts of the screen, so it controls a lot of space and can hit a lot of times. It is possible for it to do more damage based on strength. So unlike in many other categories, level ups actually can matter somewhat in Glitchless. We're going to see it here as he fights Lesser Demon. And the goal here is to actually move in such a way that those spinning swords stay on screen on the boss as long as possible. So very nice fight there from Zero. And he's going to kind of continue on with the rest of this, picking up access to the bat. As Ron mentioned, bat is going to be a little less important inside of this route due to mana management, but still very vital in being able to take care of a couple of key rooms. Gravity Penguin well into his part of the glitchless category as well. Somebody that I think has been spending quite a bit of time on the glitchless category, and I'm going to be interested to see how he fares in the marathon setting as well. Mecha Richter making his way towards the end of the game here for Richter all bosses as well.
Yeah, he had a really close call there a bit ago. We're kind of, but yeah, Mecha. No blaming him for saving right there after almost dying. So he is finishing up his run though.
So if you were to hazard, what are some of... So obviously death is a big concern with the glitchless category, with certain bosses.
Certainly.
And you mentioned how mana management is one of the big things as well. What are some of the things mentally that you kind of have to change in the way you approach the glitchless category as opposed to any percent or all bosses? Like, do you really have to switch gears on things, or is it very much just autopilot for you personally, Ron?
I think there's honestly more improv than most of the other Alucard categories. Like we were talking about earlier with some of the other runs, like if you have a mistake, yeah, you can come up with a fastest reaction to it and develop that a little more. But part of the reason that's easier in those categories is because you have infinite mana. You have the duplicator. You can just like refill your mana, do the fastest movements with the bat. And in this case, running out of mana means like you're either visiting a save, which is usually way out of the way, or coming up with a new way to get through a section with less wing smashes, less gravity boots. Maybe having to dive kick off an enemy sometimes, get a little creative. So I think there's a lot more improv in this category than many of the others. Certainly no autopilot. And another big factor into that is, we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but there's luck with the strength stat you get. When you level up, sometimes your strength stat will go up, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will go up by like 2 or 3 on a sequence of level ups, but sometimes you're just not going to see a raise in that. So they do try and mitigate some of that RNG with getting the Dragon Helm in the second castle and tacking on Holy Waters in addition to their cast so that they don't have to cast as many spells. But sometimes you're just going to have to do extra spell casts, which affects your movement for the rest of the run. And there's still a lot more that you have to do on the fly. And I think it honestly takes longer to become a comfortable glitchless runner than it does for most other Alucard categories.
So Dragon Blitz is well on his way, kind of making his way to make up probably a little bit of time here for his own team.
Yeah, I would say, Team Alucard, they're quite a ways back. They had a very rough start with the Richter 80%, but I would say that you may not see him make up the entire rest of the run here, but you could probably see him get within a pace that gets his team within a minute or two. Honestly, you just see him put on the shield again. He is flying. Like, his shield dashing is mesmerizing, to say the least. And he'll probably be doing a lot more subtle movement optimizations. I'll probably be talking about the front slide a lot once he gets double jump, more than the other runners. And yeah, he just loves this category. He has pushed this well beyond like what the record was when he started. I think when the record started, it was like mid to high 34-minute time, and he has pushed it to mid to high 32-minute time. So he's amazing at this category, and you'll probably see his team be back in the race as a result of his performance, because he has just nailed this at GDQs before. Even had what we thought was a world record at SGQ, but he.
We don't talk about that.
Oh no, we do talk about it because it was still. No. I mean, it
was still a very, very good
incredible run that like anyone could have been fooled into thinking it was a world record too. Like it was really, really good. And I see that performance out of him all the time. So. Yeah, he's another one of those runners that, like, each of them's had it so far. We've talked about it, I think, for every team so far. But he's going to be that guy in this race that's just, like, you expect the best out of him. You expect that he's going to be at the highest level of performance.
I had to stop myself so hard from making some comments. But yeah, Dragon Blitz is definitely, like, when he applies himself to pushing a category, it definitely shows. He's able to do pretty strong things in kind of whatever he applies himself to at any given time. So Zero did pick up the silver ring. You're also going to be seeing the golden ring picked up as well. Those are kind of a requirement for the glitchless category. We're also going to be discussing one of the strategies that was used to get the silver ring as Gravity Penguin makes his way over there. Zero making his way up to the gravity boots. So we do pick up quite a few movement options inside of this category, as we do in all bosses, including gravity boots and leap stone, in order to facilitate other types of movement besides wing smashing. Nice use of invincibility by Dragon Blitz to get past the stone roses here. Very, very briefly, the big difference between things is kind of drawing the conclusion between a glitch and abusing game mechanics. And that is something that is kind of community specific as to how the community decides to approach things. For Soten, things like shield dashing, invincibility from spells and items, these things are considered general game mechanics, not glitches, and so they're allowed in the glitchless category.
Yeah, basically, anytime you're doing something that is simply doing inputs in the game that you could do casually that don't require some kind of setup that involves going through a wall or manipulating something, like it's generally not considered a glitch. So that's how our community looks at it. I think this clock rush pace from Dragon Blitz might be a little faster than I was giving credit for. We might see a 7-4 something. Like,
very nice fight from
really
Gravity
ridiculous.
Penguin.
Oh yeah,
Our werewolf as well.
that is a little like more perfectly executed on that than Zero is able to do. But I mean, Zero still had a great recovery.
Yeah.
But you can see that Gravity Penguin is definitely going into this with confidence. He's going into this knowing he has a really good opportunity to get his team back into the race. And I think his PB is maybe like 30-ish seconds ahead of Zero's, but I think he feels he has the opportunity to make up more time than.
I'd be kind of interested if, because I know Gravity Penguin has had a couple of marathons where, like, he's had strong runs at certain paces, but like he's had issues with making the clock rush at a couple of minor marathons. And I'm kind of wondering if he does have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to be able to make up for that and really show his mettle in this category. And he did really strong inside the clock rush, and he did really well with Minotaur and Werewolf. I'm excited to see kind of where he takes it with the rest of this run as well. How much he's actually been pushing.
He also has quite a bit of experience with fighting games. So, you know, that mental fortitude, the just practice regimens, like he gets a lot of that from there as well.
So something that might be, we mentioned how I would call it unintuitive the inputs are for Saturn. I guess touching on that very slightly, if you play traditional fighting games, if you wanted to say do a fireball, the game expects you to do down to forward or a quarter circle forward and then punch. So like quarter circle forward, and then when you press forward, you press punch. Soten is kind of a different animal, and because of that is kind of difficult for, I think, some fighting game veterans to adjust to. Because what Soten wants instead is quarter circle forward, stop what you're doing, have a drink of coffee, then press attack.
That's
it wants
pretty accurate.
Yeah, it wants very specific inputs spread out, and that is something that is very difficult for new players to get used to, especially from a fighting game background. But it is very possible. Like, Soten's input reader is very picky, and it wants something very different than what most people are used to, but you can definitely work with it. Very strong fight there from Dragon Blitz regarding
Minotaur that was as well. Perfect. And I think he has good luck with his strength based on that fight as well. So he could be looking at a really good time here, just from at least the luck standpoint.
Yeah, if you're interested in seeing the amount of difference that a strength stat can have inside of runs, there is a quite old race between my co-commentator Rom Scout, Satoryu, and Reign of Soten, where even though there's differences in the run in general, looking at the difference in the final Dracula fight between Rom Scout and Satoryu, you can see really just how much strength Rom Scout was lacking in that final fight, and how much difference it made in his shield rod casts.
Yeah, so and I think at that time, I'm not sure if we were getting the draft, so that may have contributed to that decision.
Yeah, really exemplary display of just how much it can matter. There's other metrics that you can kind of use to see if you're on pace for that type of thing, but you know.
All right, Zero nailing the Richter save, as I'll call it. So you do have to enter the, as we're talking about, like the finicky inputs. So you have to do summon spirit as you enter the fight, so that you immediately hit the shaft orb, and then go into a soul steal out of that. And there's little frame windows in between all of the inputs for that, where it's kind of stopping you from doing it. So he had perfect timing on all of that, very well executed, and still keeping a pretty strong lead for his team entering second castle.
And as you're seeing, Zero is going to hit the save point here, not to make a save, but to refill his mana. As mentioned, mana conservation is important, as is mana refilling.
I think Dragon Blitz is swag, throwing the Gradius shields out there after after Lesser Demon's death. If you do back forward attack with the Shield Rod, it does throw the little Gradius shields or force fields that block projectiles. So that's one of the fun things about this game, is just like there's a lot of quirky little Easter eggs that you can find on many of the weapons and equipment in the game that make it interesting to just go exploring and try and find everything.
Yeah, definitely one of the big differences between Symphony of the Night and the other of this open world 2D style of Castlevania really is exemplified in some of the interviews with the creators, in that this game really was a matter of like, you know what would be cool? This. Put it in.
Yep.
You know, and like there was very little filter, it felt like, regarding that. And they just kind of let it ride, you know? If it at all fit the theme of the game, put it in. And that led to things like Easter eggs, like the Gradius Shield, and bouncing into the Master Librarian to find kind of his hidden stash of goodies, you know, all types of things like that.
Alright, so Gravity Penguin is coming up on Silver Ring pretty soon. Going to be doing a major trick that we didn't really touch on when... This is the biggest sequence break in the run. It may not be... some people will just say, like, oh, that looks glitchy, but again, he is just abusing the fact that when you use a potion, it makes you invincible. There's still actually going to be a lot of risk with this when he does it, because he has to take hits from these spikes still. This is actually one of the scariest parts of the run as well. You can see he's even like kind of hesitating a little bit on his menus, even taking an MP refill beforehand just to make sure he gets this. And he was putting me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if that mana prism might have been due to the fact also that maybe he was worried he didn't actually
have enough
like,
to make
get
it across. Yeah.
Well, I meant like get where the spikes were, you know, like maybe he landed a little bit too far to the side.
So yeah, he got through that with a little hesitation, a big setting like this, but you know, he got through and it was clean. So progressing very well with his run. I think, like you said, maybe chip on his shoulder from some previous event runs, and he's nailing this right now.
Slight route improvement, by the way. Shoutouts to Dragon Blitz for the opening of the arena door inside a Coliseum. Make a little bit more of a streamlined route through the second half of the first castle, which you're seeing on Gravity Penguin's stream.
Oh, Zero has to be a little careful here.
I was gonna say, taking hits from the Stone Skulls is not what you want to be doing.
Yeah, anything in the second castle still hits like a tank. You have to remember, they're still skipping like good like 5 bosses that are supposed to be required here in the first castle leading up to this. So being, you know, technically really underleveled and having almost no armor on, in case you haven't been keeping count, they haven't put on the Spike Breaker. They haven't put on like Alucard gear even. They're rocking the casual clothes. So it's pretty risky to get through the second castle, and he actually got through those Nova Skeletons, which can one-shot you at that point with a lot more confidence than I was expecting. He really does seem like much more seasoned than he really is coming into this. It's a pretty good performance by him as well.
So for those of you perhaps just joining in, welcome.
Oh no! What shitboxes?
Okay, all right, nice.
Oh,
that's actually
right.
the correct response there.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I'll talk about that in a sec. So for those of you just joining in, I'm TurboDog70, joined by Rom Scout. We are in the middle of the Castlevania Symphony of the Night relay race. It's a community-driven event run by Speed Gaming, hosted by Fiesel, kind of. We are well on our way into this relay race. Right now, we're in the middle of Alucard Glitchless for all three teams. We have Maria's Soten any % category to go and Alucard any % to finish it off. Welcome. We hope you guys will enjoy this event as much as we are enjoying casting it and playing it. So kind of talking about what you're referring to, Rom. So one of the things that I actually mentioned inside of my tutorial is whenever you feel completely pressured in a room, one of the best strategies possible is actually to jump straight up in the air and turn into bat. A lot of enemies really don't threaten you at full jump height and when you stay up in the air. So that was actually one of the safest and most perfect responses that Zero could have had as just a backup strat there. It was clear that the hitboxes were disjointed with the Rock Knights, so he just has to concede that that's the way things are and then make an adjustment based on that, and that was the perfect way to do so. Just do the safest response possible to cost him the least time and make himself the most safe for his relay partners on Team Belmont.
Yeah, because I don't think any runner here has saved since either their library save, Coliseum initial save that they would have been doing very early in the route. So, yeah, huge props to him for doing that. All right, so Gravity Penguin now has both rings and will be grabbing the Holy Glasses. And like you can see Dragon Blitz kind of right behind him. He has been making up quite a bit of ground. It's a little scary. And like, oh my goodness. Okay, so we don't even talk about time. Like, if you land from a long distance, you can actually cancel with either a jump or a shield. And when you do it with the shield, you can go right into shield dashing faster. He's doing optimizations to the point where he's actually doing perfectly angled dive kicks and then canceling that landing with the shield to go straight into shield dashing. That's just beautiful movement that you don't really get a chance to see in other categories as much, just because you are just getting to fly everywhere with Bat with infinite mana.
Yeah, I'd say that one of the marks of a good category is presenting situations and skips that aren't present in other ones as well, but still look fantastic and still present a large amount of skill. So we still got a little bit of time to go, but I guess we can kind of discuss very briefly why is it that Maria is being run on Saturn, and why are no other categories given kind of that emphasis on console?
Certainly. Maria is only playable, that being the Sega Saturn version, which is the original one with her, and then the PSP version, which a couple runners ran in the initial Richter race, but you don't really want to play Maria on PSP as much because they kind of nerfed her and made her not as fun to speedrun with, and also it's just a later version of the game. But the Saturn version, you have Maria with like a triple jump. She has like an invincibility spell. She can summon a dragon that just takes up 3/4 of the screen. Like, she has some really crazy stuff, as well as much more interesting movement. And her uppercut actually does what you think an uppercut would do. In the PSP version, it's more like a bird floats you up for a few frames, it's kind of lame. So it just presents itself as a much more interesting speedrun, and as a result, there's more runners for it, and it's had a lot more attention put into just the show of it, I'd say. The optimization that makes it look cool and fancy.
So if Maria ends up having this Saturn category for console, why are we forgoing the option to play with, say, Alucard or Richter on that particular console?
Well, the lovely thing about the Saturn version is that shield dashing is slower than walking on that in many rooms, because they didn't optimize that port for lag at all. Do you see dust clouds every time like Dragon Blitz is shield dashing there? Those actually lag the game on the Saturn version. Every time you pause the game, that wastes 10 seconds minimum, because you have to do a 5-second load in and out of it. It's just an incredibly unoptimized version in terms of lag and loading, and it becomes a little infuriating to play these other characters with it. But Maria was actually the only character that had any consideration for how the game was built. So she actually plays a lot nicer, and even though you have a lot of lag here and there, you actually can get around it a lot easier and make it a much cleaner run.
Yeah, it is considerably longer as far as loading and just general frame rate and gameplay optimizations. Just in general, a much worse playing game, and has considerably different strategies as a result. Zero is going to be finishing up his leg of the glitchless race, hopefully here. Still a dangerous position. Shaft is relatively easy, but if Dracula does not go well, with the lack of armor on Zero right now, he can be killed very quickly, so he does need to be very careful about how he moves during this fight. You will see him using the Holy Water. Holy Water is very, very powerful against a variety of second castle bosses. It has a huge amount of damage and hits multiple times, and you can kind of throw multiple of them to amplify your damage output at any given time. So you'll be seeing him using that in addition to Iron Shield, Shield Rod during this fight. So we'll see him kind of dodging these first few slaps from Dracula's form here. It's going pretty well so far. Yeah. Alright, very nice. So, again, seems very simple, but again, when you get hit twice or 3 times, you're dead. And there's not a lot you can do about that. So very important that he clutches that out.
Yeah, and there actually is a much safer strat to do on there, where if you like hide in the corner, you can still do shield cast, but none of these runners are going to do that, because it's a little bit faster to go from the middle, much riskier, but way, way faster. And so it's really good that he was able to execute that perfectly.
All right, so we're going to kind of talk about Scavenger's run here, which you're going to be seeing in the bottom right.
There's the beautiful lag.
So Maria has some pretty unique options. As you can see, she has a flying kick, which you can do by running and then pressing one of the alternate attack buttons. That's very, very fast to start up and does a lot of damage and has a very good hitbox for protecting Maria. Maria also has access to a triple jump, which is very good for positional changes. She also has a slide that you're seeing as Scavenger gets free space. Slide is considerably faster than other forms of movement for Maria. However, it is important that she budgets it because it doesn't do as much damage as that flying kick. It also creates small amounts of lag from the dust particles, as Romscat was saying. She gets access to a super jump similar to Richter's or Alucard's. Hers has a very, very interesting property to it where she can cut very, very extreme angles diagonally with it, which is very useful for certain screens of the run, particularly in about 1.5 minutes when we see the first couple screens of the chapel. You're going to be seeing that very, very steep angle that she can cut.
I've always wondered how her slide animation happens without her just no longer having knees in it. It's one of those great questions I've always wondered with her. Yeah, she has a lot more moves you won't be seeing here as well. She does have a healing move. She has.
We might see the healing. Let's
I
not
guess.
count our use here.
Fair enough. You might see the healing. She also has an owl friend. She also can do a Mega Man move. Actually, she does have a Buster and a charge shot with it. So they gave her kind of everything. Like I think while we're talking about the original version of the game having like everything that went on the drawing board made it into the game. This was the stuff that was on the napkins that never made it to the drawing board. That made it into the Saturn version.
Yeah, she does have access to a dive kick as well, just to gain portions of downward movement as well. She also has access to some very, very powerful spells. I'm going to be interested to see what Scavenger uses here. The optimized thing is 4 beasts, but I'm going to see if he decides to use Byaku instead.
Oh, I believe he's using 4 beasts.
Okay.
Yeah, he does have a sub 8-minute time in this run, which is incredibly strong. And actually, all of the runners representing their teams here today have that, which is ridiculous. But yeah, the reason he did the invincibility spell with the 4 beasts in addition to Bible is because even with the long animation, even with having to kind of dance around Hippogriff, that's still faster than the amount of lag produced from doing a couple Hellfires, which is the other option there.
Yeah, 4 Beasts is an invincibility spell that lasts it's like 60 seconds or something. It's a very long invincibility spell. And you deal damage as you're inside of enemies. And it powers up your attacks as you're inside. So the combination of 4 Beasts with Maria's kind of like, I don't know what you'd call them, martial art attacks, and Bible makes her a formidable opponent for a couple of the bosses in the game. We're also going to be seeing a couple of other spells here, namely Byaku, which will be a fire flamethrower spell that will be seen in the second castle, and perhaps Siryu, the dragon spell. But we'll kind of get those as they come up.
I'm really happy you know the names of these, because I definitely never learned them. I have like the dragon, the the owl, those kinds of spell names in my repertoire.
You also see some sick loading screens that don't exist in other versions of the game with the Saturn version.
Look, dude, that chapel is really hard to render. And actually, speaking of chapel, since Scavenger is coming up to it, the tombstone playing really well today. But you're gonna see the only clip in the run as well, which is I guess, did we mention yet she has a backdash? Because she has a backdash and it's only used for that.
I'll tell you something we did mention. The doors are messed up in the chapel, and you're about to see that pretty soon here after this Medusa fight. Yeah,
if you thought Alucard's door glitches here were interesting. So some more optimized things you'll be seeing after he goes out of bounds. You can actually do like really quick falls, quicker than intended, even for like a normal fall, and that's from going through a screen transition the right way, with the right inputs. So yeah, it's the other way of doing it though is to just chain these dive kicks over and over again. I think you'll probably see Josh do the way I was talking about, but like still the amount of movement options she has is just hilarious. Something that's interesting here is that there are 2 ways to get from out of bounds there up to this section, because there's a loading room to the left of a very small one like that other one you saw in the first chapel. Because there's a loading room there, sometimes when you go in the wrong pixel position at the top of the screen there, you load the room twice. You get like 2 full loading animations. Also, that damage boost, dude, is so scary. See, I told you they wouldn't use the healing spell.
By the way, Dragon Blitz completely destroyed Akmadon using Holy Water.
Yeah.
Akmadon critically weak to Holy Water. Like, he hasn't had a drink in years. Fucking hundreds of years.
The fact that Maria can jump out of a kick is just like, why? Like, why do you need that? Like, it's like being able to double jump out of a dash jump in Mega Man.
If you're interested kind of in how Maria plays and you've never played it before, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's like Richter, except you don't have to constantly worry about dying. Like, instead of Richter taking 1 to 4 hits to die, Maria can take, like, 4 to 7. So she has a considerably better health pool. And then even if you do take
with
hits,
a full
she
MP
has, like,
bar,
invincibility.
Yeah, with the full MP bar, it translates to, like 30. Alright, so Gravity Penguin...
let's see...
keeping his team in the race as much as he can here, and certainly keeping Team Maria ahead of Team Alucard. Was a pleasant surprise. Like, I probably expected Dragon Blitz to pass at least one person in this glitchless portion here. So, honestly, I can't say anything other than that was a very strong performance by Gravity Penguin. So, good job to him. Yes, we do have a little bit of the run left, but I'm fully confident in his abilities.
I'm very interested in how Gravity Penguin and Dragon Blitz are going to handle the end of this. Scavenger just going to cast Seiryu, a dragon, and completely dunk all over Shaft here. So that's going to do it for Maria any percent for Team Belmont. They're going to be finishing off with Alucard any percent soon enough here. So we'll have to see. This is really their race to lose at this point. So, however, Gravity Penguin is finishing pretty strong. So, I mean, a couple of slip-ups is not going to be a good luck for Team Belmont. So we'll just have to see what happens. Good fight there from Gravity Penguin. Team Alucard is doing pretty well too. They just finished off Shaft. We're going to see how Dragon Blitz does on the Dracula fight, which has perhaps given him some difficulty in recent memory in marathons. So we'll see how he does.
Look, he just needed to keep it as a true Zero Bosses run. I think this is actually the first
favorite part of the run.
This may be one of the first times that we've seen the intro for Alucard. A few things to mention about the intro. Oh, Dracula getting a hit in, making it a little interesting. I'll wait until Dracula is defeated before we start talking about the intro that's coming up. There we go.
There we go.
So good job to Dragon Blitz. But yeah, the intro has a few different things to it. You want to beat Dracula in under a minute, so you start with max base stats on everything. You want to end with 0 hearts so that you have a heart refresh in your inventory, and you want to also gain over 40 hearts at some point in that intro before you fight Dracula, because that gives you
a critical point. Sorry to interrupt.
A critical point. No problem.
BT has just messed up. He decided he hit the bats during the early part of the run for death skip. You need a very specific experience manipulation there in order to cause the death skip. So he is going to have to restart. So that is going to be like a good 50 seconds to a minute that they just lost. So anyway, I digress. Continue, Realm Scout.
Yeah, no, and that's certainly a minute and a half that Red Ninja Josh and Team Maria get back there. So, and honestly, Team Alucard not far behind them in the chase. So, yeah, that's huge. But yeah, I pretty much went over everything. Like, you can do a lot of things with intro. to determine what stats you're starting with, and if you don't get hit, you have a bonus of 5 HP. If you do something like end with the cross sub weapon in your inventory, you get 5 extra MP. If you end up having no sub weapons at all the entire time and beat them in under a minute, you get 10 extra HP. So it's you usually won't see that one done. It's not really helpful to a speedrun, but it takes a lot of skill for sure. But yeah, that's the intro determines a lot of things and allows for having all the items you need for the glitch setups throughout this run. You're going to see Blacktastic now come up to the death skip with the proper amount of experience, and he's going to get a level up off that last work. We saw this in the all bosses run for Alucard as well, but I would say that it's just as important in this run. Like, you're maybe not losing minutes from not having the Alucard shield since it's not prevalent in this run, but still would be a good, like, 20 seconds lost, let's say. But he nails it, so... another thing would be that he'd probably be improvising the rest of the route had he just chose to go forward without having the Alucard equipment. He would have probably didn't have the confidence of like doing a glitchless run or anything under his belt. So
I absolutely think that it is the correct option to reset there.
Yeah,
especially
I would say he probably would have
without
lost more than
exceptional knowledge.
Yeah.
Not just for the amount of time lost, but also just the danger involved for a marathon setting. I think it's unfortunate, but it's fine in the grand scheme of things to lose a minute to that type of thing.
Yeah, and otherwise, his shield dashing is looking on point. This looks like it's going to be a really good clock rush. Had to wait a split second there to make sure he didn't get poisoned, but yeah, this is a pretty good start to this reattempt.
Zelgius coming up on the out of bounds here soon enough. Oh, sorry. Wrong castle. Wrong castle. Josh is going to be coming up on that in about 1:30 here, though. He's going to get his attempts in. Probably the sickest of the out of bounds that you can fail is you can end up in the spike room and die instantly with Maria. So that's a thing that can happen.
I feel like most of these runners aren't really worried about that as much as going back into Medusa. Does happen to everyone once in a while. The door transitions in this area are just really hilariously finicky.
Of note, Blacktastic has chosen not to pick up the potion for the book jump inside the library, so we'll have to see how that works out for him.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't touch on the books that much in the other Alucard runs, but
we can pick it up as we get a little bit closer to that, definitely, because that
is
definitely a place where you can lose a minute.
All right, Josh nailing the out of bounds. As I was saying, managed to cancel out the dive kicks at the right spots and just get incredible speed from it. Messed it up there, but yeah, he's flying now. So putting his team in a really good position, he can finish out this run. I believe his health might be a little low. I can't really tell from the cropping, but I think that he's got to make a pretty hard choice here on whether he does this damage boost or not. That's slightly more optimal.
Josh is pretty knowledgeable in knowing that sometimes you just take the heal. So I mean, if he feels pressured at all, he's going to take the heal.
Josh is the world record holder for this category, so I would expect no less than perfect execution of whatever he chooses to do there, and nails it. So.
Interesting thing about the flying kick from Maria, you can actually cut it short, which is good for positioning purposes in certain rooms. Touching on the Blacktastic stream, something that we haven't mentioned in the other Alucard categories, Doppelganger 10 and 40 are both susceptible entirely to the stopwatch, which allows for these fights to be extremely trivial for them. Normally, bosses are only either slowed or completely unaffected by stopwatch, but Doppelganger, in both of its forms, is a major exception to that rule. I'm a little interested if Josh is going to decide to 4-beast shaft. It is theoretically faster to
I'm not even
4-beast
sure
shaft.
if the record currently has that strat in there.
The record's still fighting to get gray fire on Byaku. A lot of keep in mind that whenever we make a statement about Soten, much of the time it can always be qualified, right? There's wing smash is the fastest form of movement. Oh, but then you can clip into the ground and go at like 5,000 pixels per frame or whatever. But the goal is always to try and make games as accessible as possible through education, and hopefully you guys are getting excited about these runs and maybe learning something about them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you wanted to pick up this game at all, Alucard 80% does have a ton of resources now. You can go to the speedrun.com Symphony Night page and probably pick up the basic route in a few hours. I'd say a 12-hour challenge for this game is a pretty good thing to do to get you started and getting like some good times. So.
So Blacktastic finishing up his clock rush with Wolf. Wolf actually an interesting addition, not extremely new, but a newer addition inside of the route here at the end of clock rush. As mentioned by Scout, just makes some of this jumping sequence a little bit quicker. You can also do some precise jumps at the very end here in order to bypass the Ouija tables. Blacktastic actually using a strat that I use where I basically just take the damage boost at the end to end an Alucard form. Just kind of streamlines the end there.
You also are probably only throwing away about a second, and he got here with plenty of time anyway, so, whatever. It's a little more swag to do the full Wolf, but certainly a lot easier and not throwing away much time to do that damage boost at the end.
Alright, so what is Zelgius going to choose here? Okay, he will go with Seiryu. Just nice consistency. Easy game, easy life. So all three teams are going to be making their way into Alucard any percent here. Blacktastic with a significant lead already out of the clock rush. So we're going to see what happens regarding books here. As mentioned, Minotaur Werewolf is simply a case of skipping the pre-designated cutscene and forcing the AI to not activate. And when you do that, you can basically wail on them for a good 10-12 seconds before they decide to move. Nice manipulation there on the Sword Masters on Blacktastic's screen to bypass them. There's a number of ways you can do that. He chooses to use a jumping strat. So we discussed a little bit about the book jump and the dive kicking mechanics in general. Using the Wolf jump, the Wolf's changed jumping mechanics on slopes inside the library, we access the fairy card earlier than expected. This does require you to untransform from the Wolf during its extraordinarily high jump and do a very precise dive kick off of the book's hitbox. Books are very finicky in how they decide to move, and as a result of that, you can oftentimes get into a position where you trade hits with the books, or the book doesn't come in range for you to actually dive kick. As you saw there, Blacktastic actually picked up the potion, so I misspoke before, but the book didn't even come in.
Yeah, it was not even in a close range from a dive kick off of. It's a very rare pattern to have.
Alright, but he does manage to get the second one, and he is on his way, so that's good.
Yeah, but that part is definitely a run kick. Personal best. Like, I see so many runs in there from so many runners. There are some more consistent setups you can get, both with using the potion if you get an okay position whatsoever from the book, and also Ben Outen came up with a very good strat where you actually have no RNG at all aside from a critical hit, where you punch the book into position, so there's no movement RNG with it, and then the dive kick kills the book, so you don't have to worry about its hitbox.
I feel like the punch strat is a very strong strat. Unfortunately, I've never been able to really learn it that well. But punch strat's pretty good. The normal strat's pretty strong as well. It's just whatever you can do to make it work, really. Missing it one time isn't too bad. It's about 8 seconds a miss, give or take. So it's not the end of the world if you miss it unless you're pushing really, really strong times. What really hurts you, though, is if you miss it about 3 times in any percent for Alucard, you run out of mana, and as a result of that, you either need to wait for mana, as was the case kind of earlier for Team Alucard, I believe.
Yeah.
Or you need to just completely forgo getting the fairy card early and instead go for Lesser Demon, which results in you picking up the bat. It's about a minute time loss or so, but you'd be looking at more time loss if you were trying to wait for your mana regen at that point. Soccer Freak having some issues with his controller there.
All right, so what's oh, okay, we got the library card on. I mean, when you're this far ahead, why risk anything, right?
Yeah.
Like you might as well go with the safe strat, throw away a few seconds.
I mean, I always mention to people that until a recent run by Dragon Blitz, it is actually possible, realistically, if you played well enough to world record in this game, without doing the library floor skip, or without doing the spell skip, which is another form of the death skip. Some of the strategies in this game don't really save a ton of time, but the big difference is when you're really pushing those low times, you want to try to implement as many strats as possible, despite the fact that maybe you could PB without them. So it really just comes up to runner prerogative. I tend to lean more to the side of don't implement strats until they're the best gains you could have. There's definitely other runners that want to try to implement them much more aggressively. What are your kind of takes on that type of argument that one has with oneself as a speedrunner as to like how dumb should I go with strats?
It depends on the game for me. Like, I usually do like to get that comfort level of completing runs before I worry about doing things that make it extremely reset heavy. So I think over time, for most of my speedruns, I've kind of gone with your take on it, which is get comfortable with the movement, get comfortable with the little things that matter regardless of what big strategies you're using. And I guess in my case with this game, I was always in a pretty good position since I've been running it so long that anytime there's like a new strategy coming up, it's, you know, everyone's on even ground with with having to learn it at the same time. So, and I already have other ones under my belt usually. So with this game, I've been pretty fortunate with
BT going super safe.
Yeah.
He either understands how far his team is ahead, or he has decided that he's just like, I don't feel comfortable with this, so like why even try to force it? And that's totally fine. Doing that version of the Richter skip loses something like 7 seconds. It's completely negligible in the prospect of this race, and it's 100% safe. So I mean, you really can't blame him. Again, especially if he's cognizant of how far his team is ahead. I mean, he can be as safe as he wants at this point, really.
Medusa just crumbling to the Buffalo Stars.
Are the Buffalo Stars from Buffalo, or are they from the animal buffalo?
They probably bought them at Buffalo Wild Wings, but something you'll see some of these runners do. Off the chapel ceilings, you can actually get much more height with your wing smashes by having several of them going upwards in a row, and it just gives you additional height on that last one coming off the ceiling. So same with this part right here that Black Tastic just did to have a clean wing smash through that clips the ceiling and just gives a huge vertical boost. So you saw that a little less in all bosses in this section because they had gravity boots by that point and were doing much faster movement. But yeah, for the movement available in this category, this is some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, so really, BT has a couple of hurdles to do. He still needs to do the relic skip, which can cost you quite a bit of time if you fail each attempt. You could, in bizarre circumstances, you can die to the guards there as well on a really, really bad attempt. You also do need to be cognizant of Dracula as well. It's a relatively easy fight on any percent, but I would be remiss to say that nobody has died against him.
I feel like
you will die sometimes.
I feel like all of these runners and everyone else who's run Soten for a long time has died on Dracula at some point. And he almost got a taste of that Guardian sword you were talking about. So there's a couple big obstacles left between him and his team finishing here. So maybe feeling a little pressure, but here we are. Only Dracula stands between him and his team taking away the victory here.
Opting not to save there. Not that you would expect to die, but, So, why wasn't Tiger Soten added on to this relay race?
Well, you would need three runners
bust out the
for it.
webcams.
You would need 3 runners for it, and I'm not even sure I know 3 people who have ever beaten all 5 levels of that game. It's actually pretty hard.
All right, Blacktastic coming into the final stretch here. Double Buffalo Stars. One of the primary reasons you pick him up is for Shaft and Dracula to increase your damage output. So let's see if he finishes off strong and clutches this out for Team Belmont. I'm sure he's going to gloriously post some Richter memes if he does on Twitter. Which should be it if he gets past this next swipe, and good.
Boom,
It's
there it
time
is.
for Team Belmont.
Well,
So,
congrats to Team Belmont or Team Richter, however you may want to look at it. They put on, I would say, like, at some point they were way behind at the start, I think, and then because Talek just had an amazing performance on Richter mode at the start, and then they kind of just like kept creeping back into it over the course of the next few runs. They didn't.
I mean,
have
they were
anybody
very
who
much
just,
my
like,
picks for for people that could definitely be very surprising.
Yeah, I mean they just had very consistent runs. Nothing crazy, but nothing that was catastrophic either. Just exuded confidence the whole time. And I'm sorry, there was one amazing run. We do have to say that Ben Outen on the Richter Hall bosses, like maybe close to world record. So I guess that was one that definitely helped a lot.
So I mean, let's just Johns this super hard. If they didn't win by 400 minutes, then Team Renard is the winner because Talek did it on PSX.
That's true.
But
we might have had some pretty close times there. But yeah,
that was
was
a pretty close race between the remaining 2 runners.
Yeah, this is still second place is definitely up for grabs right now. Again, I thought that at the start that somebody would need to get a big lead on Team Alucard to have a chance to get ahead of like PC tracks by the end of the Alucard aim percent run. Obviously Richter did that, but like you can see just how well he's doing right now and how hard it is for Team Maria to have kept their lead. They've already lost it, and I would say he needs to definitely have some major mess ups here to lose the newly gotten lead at this point.
I'm actually trying to dig for some information here from a news source here as we're continuing this run. Yeah, it would appear that Sakura is also on a 360. I was wondering if he was on PSX or not. So this will be a gentlemanly race between two scholars.
So yeah, I think we really had from all three teams just at least one really incredible run. Like I would say Dragon Blitz on Glitchless was ridiculous. Ben Outen on Richter All Bosses was amazing, and Talik on the Richter runs was also like really good, along with Otaku on All Bosses. It's all around. I think that everybody put on a really good performance. I think that this showcases the Soten community pretty well. A lot of talented people that can run a lot of different categories and characters.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we got all of the relevant categories that aren't terrible. But yeah, seriously though, this is especially considering this was a rather quickly put together time frame for this relay to come together. So I'm glad that we were able to get as many participants as we did, and people were able to practice. I'm actually kind of looking forward to perhaps maybe a Metroidvania style relay at some point, but that might be sometime in the future. So
yeah, and there's Castlevania randomizers as well. So who knows? Maybe some tournaments of those at some point.
So PC Track's well on his way into starting the second castle here. Soccer Freak hitting the trigger break for the Richter skip, and a little close there on the Richter skip.
that
wing smash,
was
but he did
much closer to soft walk than you may have thought. All right, trying to get a couple of the runners here to talk to us about how they felt their runs went, how their team did, stuff like that. So give me just a couple minutes, and we'll try and get a couple people in here.
So what you're saying is that the final outro will be people passing the buck on how it wasn't their fault.
I mean, to be fair, it's always Soten's fault.
So now both teams firmly losing to I Am the Wind as well. Very, very hard split to beat. PC Track's making his way kind of the final section of the game. Still has to hit the relic skip. A couple of failures on the relic skip is easily within the realm of possibility for Sakura Freak to be able to catch up if he plays well. So we're just going to have to see how PC Track's kind of caps off his run. All right, so here comes the heart refresh. That seems like a good positioning for RSL for the relic skip, so PC Tracks just needs to hit this transformation and wing smash chain. All right, we are in the final save room for Team Alucard. It's now up to them to be able, or it's now up to PC Tracks to be able to finish off the final Dracula fight well. Again, still dangerous. 2 or 3 hits is enough to be able to kill Alucard, even with the Alucard gear. All right, nice shaft fight from PC Tracks and including getting a little closer to shaft to just increase the speed that the Buffalo Stars hit. Very nice. Sakura getting a good pixel, having to shift a little bit there, but totally understandable given how precise the relic skip is. And PC Tracks now starting Drac. Will he avoid the 3 slaps? That is 1 slap. That is 2. Good. All right, so that's time for Team Alucard, or Fahrenheit's Tepish, or that guy who is Dracula spelled backwards. However you choose to say that person's name.
All right.
So Sakrafik just coming in just a slight bit later.
About to finish, and yeah, he kept that second castle pretty close, honestly. Definitely recovered a lot from the first castle, and I think made it a little closer than expected at the end there. So really strong performance from him as well. So we do have people coming in team right now. We have Mecha Richter coming in from Team Alucard. We have Blacktastic, who did the finishing run for the Victor Team Richter. And then from Team Maria, we have Mataka. So if all of you would like to introduce yourselves.
Hey, you hear me?
Yo.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I am Mecha Richter.
I'm Matako.
And you sound very tired. Thank you for doing this from your across the ocean, by the way.
No, you're right. I mean, 6 a.m. feels great outside.
So you can catch breakfast after this, right?
Yeah, right.
You can have a morning set. Just go kill a table.
Straight into your next day.
Yeah, just the day has started. Now I can begin.
Oh, you run Final Fantasy 9.
8 a.m. is even better.
Yo, Graveyard Shift Unite.
So I guess just one by one here. First, tell me how you thought each of your individual runs. Starting with Mecha, I saw you had quite a scare at the end of it.
Yeah. So practice wasn't going so well. I mean, the rust was real, but this is one game I just never forget. It's like riding a bike; you never forget about it. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just really nervous because it's like, you know, if you die anywhere, that's it. You gotta start over. So I knew I was doing really good, so I didn't sweat it too much until that Gorgon hit me, and then like I just froze up. I'm like, there's a save room right here. I'm grabbing this because that Guardian will show me the business otherwise, and I don't want to start the whole run over at the last room.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise for me watching the, especially the longer Richter runs. Was just, it didn't seem like you guys were particularly keen on taking saves as aggressively as I would have thought, given the relay race. Maybe Talek can kind of elaborate as well, since he was doing all bosses for his team. But was there any thoughts in your heads as to kind of your decision to forgo some of the saves, or were you just like kind of, I don't do it in practice, so let's just get it done?
Well, I can answer for Talek. Just doing it so much, it's like you just kind of have to make that decision as you're doing the run. It's like, am I safe to just keep going if I grab some health along the way, or do I really need to save? It's just kind of something you have to do on the fly. But like I mentioned before, the run went pretty well on my end, so I didn't really feel like there was any serious threat, unless it's hard to say though, because it's like, you know, everybody that runs the game knows how bad the inputs are in this game. Like, you can just miss one anywhere, and that could be it. So you just have to be cautious, I guess, throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, even with me getting a whole bunch of health ups in the first castle, in the second castle, even a single touch from a witch like took 30% of my HP. So that was one of the reasons why I was feeling a little bit nervous and saving a lot of the time, even just to refill HP.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, it was a very strong run, given that you didn't know you were doing it entering the day. So, huge props for actually getting through a Richter all bosses run on that notice, because I'm not sure there's many other runners in the community who could do that.
Yeah, Talik definitely deserves some props for that, because he came in knowing that, or not knowing that he was going to be doing 2 categories at runs. Once,
I'm just glad I smoked double twice.
Yeah, that was tight.
And speaking of tight, I think that's how I describe your run, Mata, for all bosses. How'd you feel that one? Was there anything just
I mean, it was
set on going for the floor clip?
yeah, I really wanted to go for it a couple of times, but I thought I'll not faff around and waste too much being silly. But no, I mean, it's the same as what Mecha says. It's like, even when you take a couple of weeks off or a couple of months off from the game, it only takes about 2 or 3 days to get back into it. And yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's just, a lot of the run was fine. My pause buffering was garbage, and that's what cost me a couple of the skips. But like all in all, it's just solid, and it's just, like you said, it's knowing what to do in the situations. The big thing I always go back to, anytime you do something like a marathon or a race or whatever, it comes to just do what you know, because as soon as you change things or try and adapt it or play things too safe and you're not used to it, that's when things go wrong. And all the time, that's when you get hitting things. But no, the run was fairly solid, but it was just the skips that let me down, except for the chapel skip. It was quite lovely.
Yeah, that one was beautiful for sure. And you know, BT, like, I'm sure it's appeared that you knew that how. But did you feel any pressure at the end there? Like, how are you feeling? You know, closing out your team's victory.
I'd like to kind of extend that question out to all of the runners as well after Blacktastic. Like, how did you guys feel about pressure, or how did you feel about people approaching the run, or as you were watching your fellow runners on your team? But Blacktastic first, definitely.
Sure. First of all, am I coming in okay?
Yeah, we're gonna do fine.
You sound good on my end.
You're good.
Awesome. I don't know, I feel like with like relays and races, you always have to feel like you always feel some sort of pressure. There's only ever been like one other relay that I've been a part of, and I was also anchoring for that team. It was a classic Mega Man relay, so shades of that time just kind of like overcame me. Like Alucard at 80% is a pretty basic category in its own right, but there are a couple of critical moments where you could just like fail in its entirety or soft lock, and like just could be nothing that you can do about it. Thankfully for me, my team did work, as in like we could not have like pulled through so far ahead without those guys. So that definitely eased up the pressure a little bit. There was no part in the run where I actually felt comfortable. Like that's just how unforgiving Saturn as a game is, especially with what Mecha Richter touched on with like the troubles and like the of his run. But no, like overall, with my play, I was a nervous wreck. But with how my team was quite pacing along there, it was pretty much smooth sailing. A bit of a neutral feeling for me.
And extending that to the other
for-
runners for sure. Like, how did you feel watching your teammates, especially? And did it contribute to the pressure of your run at all, Mecha?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely put some weight on my shoulders, but it kind of motivated me a little more too, knowing that I had to try to catch up some ground. But overall, I think I did pretty solid. We all did pretty good. Like everybody that participated in the race did a great job. But Yeah, it was fun. I was definitely nervous though. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a nervous wreck, especially at that last save. I just had to do what I had to do.
I mean, this game in general definitely can be nerve-wracking, especially Richter mode, though.
Yeah,
no doubt about that. And
Taco
Mitaka,
Talik?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Talik was going to do a solid job. He's the closest thing to a machine. When he's oiled, he's oiled, and I knew it was going to be fine. The biggest thing I get is that if there's a lot of silence, which is you get like when you do like online marathons and races and stuff like that, and you're not chatting to anyone and keeping busy. If I've got time to let my head tell me things, it's gonna go wrong pretty quickly. So if I can be chatting through it, and I do generally talk quite a lot, it helps calm me because I'm not worried about things that are going on and stuff like that. But then, I mean, once your part's done, it's just it really is like a real like camaraderie team thing, and you want to see what everyone's doing, and it's really interesting because there's never a case of it's like, oh, you really hope people mess up. You just want to see people bring their best and see how close you can get it. But I wouldn't have said that. So like we're coming in after the first run because I mean Talik had a pretty solid lead with having the deathless any percent, and it was just a case of okay, well, I've got to maintain that. I'm not thinking okay, well we've got that. I'm not going to take the foot off the gas, and I'm not going to try and be too silly and push it too far. It's just stick in the box and do what you know. But the biggest thing for me when it comes to nerves is not having something to bounce back off and go through. So yeah, silence is my worst enemy when it comes to nerves.
So there's going to be the tiniest bit of shade here coming out as I do ask this kind of question. So I guess I'll direct this for Talik specifically, because we had talked kind of briefly before this, and I kind of talked with some of the other Richter runners where I had mentioned how when you're doing a race like this for relay, how does it have to change your mindset, or does it at all for you personally that not only is it not about like necessarily PBing, but it's not necessarily also about representing yourself in these runs? Like you have to be part of a team and as a squad. Does it affect your mentality and what you will go for, what you will attempt to do, how you will approach certain situations?
It definitely does. I would say there's definitely a line, and for me in any percent, that line is definitely much more towards just making sure you do a good job, and if something goes awry, make sure that you have a backup plan in place, which in Richter 90% pretty much means get a little bit more hearts, because in that category you're gonna one hit die in the second castle. So all you can pretty much do is if something happens, have that Hydrostorm on the trigger finger and just try to recover and play slowly after that. But otherwise I still want to present a speed run, so I'm still gonna go for fast strats in a way that I think is safe as possible for the environment of a race, or especially a relay race where I have teammates and stuff. In general, I felt pretty fine in my 80% run. That zombie that spawned under me threw me off a little bit, but yeah, in general I felt pretty fine. I would be lying if I said I wasn't shaking for the first 5 minutes of the all bosses run. But it, like, for this game, when you kind of start a run and you play, especially a long run, you kind of just zone out and you just play the game after that. So I was fine after a bit. But then I saw that Ben, the Beast Autumn, said done in the chat. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of the run. And I immediately died to Galmor. Because I didn't remember the setup. So, but luckily I had saved before that, so oh well.
Yeah, but Ben is scary in any category he decides to pick up that day for sure. So certainly an understandable reaction. Kind of like a closing question. I mean, obviously we all love this game. I've seen all of you running it for several years at this point. And I definitely remember your first run that you streamed, Talek, so because it had quite a story behind it. But like, why do you keep sticking with this game? Like, you know, for all the people out there that haven't picked up this game at all, and maybe their interest piqued by this series of races, like, what is it for each of you that keeps you coming back, learning new categories, and just trying to keep at it? Mecha first.
I can give a short, sweet answer. I'm a masochist.
That works. Well, okay, so maybe not everyone here run trying to beat the game with just the bat room. But
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. It's a fun category if you like grinding for 2 hours.
So-
oh,
it's-
okay, Matako, that's your category since you play FF9.
Yeah,
No, it's-
I mean, like, there cannot be a better feeling than knowing that the record's 4 hours and cutting off an hour and a half on your PB to get the next record.
That's true. No, that's what I was saying though. Like, in all seriousness, I just love the game. It was one of my favorite games growing up, so it's one I never get tired of playing. I definitely need my breaks from it, that's for sure, but it's one I can always go back to and just play and screw around. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do in the game. Round Scout remembers back in the day, we do like silly races with just like the most random stuff. Like Breakfast with All Rocks was one that was just, I don't even remember how that came up, but it was literally just, you get like 3 food items, specific food items, and then you throw them on the table in the All Rocks room and you sit in a chair and just have breakfast. Like, that was the entire race. So there's just so much you can do in the game, so much variety, and like I said, it's just, it never gets boring. Even like Richter mode, you're always going. There's like no stopping, no slowdown. There's no downtime. It just keeps your mind going. So it's just a great game.
Anything anyone else wanted to add to that?
I only play it because you bully me into doing it. I would say for Symphony of the Night, it's extremely versatile and it's really satisfying to play because you can get with different types of games and different types of runs. Like in a 3D game, the way the action moves, it's a bit looser. It's not as tight. And with Metroidvanias, because the movement can be so precise and you can achieve so many like intricate things, and you kind of like develop as you go. So like you can go with like a beginner route and you can get a really clean run and get a really nice time, and then you introduce another strat or different techniques, and you can spend hours just sitting working on one single room. And once you get it in a run, it's a really satisfying experience. So they actually get that. I mean, no one's got a perfect run, and until that happens, I think you can always enjoy like striving towards that and saying, okay, well that wasn't great, I can work on that. And because it is so versatile with different characters and different movement tech, like that's what really makes it interesting. Because the difference between the same rooms and 80% and all bosses are completely different, and they're completely different to Glitchless. And it lends itself really nicely to things like bingo and completing the game in different ways, or doing the low percent categories, or whatever like fun things you want to do. I mean, you could do a different thing every single day of the week with Symphony of the Night and still not get bored of it. And everything is straightforward to do. Is the big thing. There's no giant learning curve of saying, okay, well I have to grind out this one technique or this one strat for 5 days to get it. You can pick up the game, you can follow simple instructions, and you can get through it quite quickly, like in your first go. And that's a really nice thing as well. It's very rewarding to play in that regard.
A lot of transferable strats also. As you pick up one run, you can kind of move into the next as you feel comfortable.
I mean, all of you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head there, but yeah, it's an easily accessible game, and I'll just say this, it's one of the best $10 you'll ever spend. You can get it on pretty much any platform nowadays.
That's a cheap price to upgrade your 360 to a Saturn box.
I do have, I think all of us have one that we have just for Saturn on it and nothing else.
Actually, I do, because I was getting a lot of, not lag, but I was like adding 2 or 3 seconds of just random loading times. and Richter 80%. So I got a 360 for just Soten. And it's also on Xbox One now. So if
Well, you
guys
also
wanna-
have controllers for just Richter. I know your B button's not working on one of them, and your like joystick's missing on at least half of them.
Well, this D-pad's bound to break soon. It has a huge crack in the middle, and the white button's starting to stick. The shoulder buttons still work, actually. The other one does not. That one is kaput.
So the real question for Rom Scout. So the next time we do something like this, when is Team Old Boys coming out? Where it's Rom Scout, Mecha Richter, Satoryu,
And Reign.
Soten.
Reign of Soten. Yeah, well, I'm sure those guys have been watching or keeping an eye on this. So there you go. There's your call out. And I know Satori knows how to do the PSP run, but he really needs to get that at sub 17 and any percent. I know he's capable. Oh yeah,
When-
Disqual needs to come back too. That's a good.
When's the sword card races again? Those are fun.
Oh my god. Deliberately do 2010 route.
I honestly don't remember how to do that anymore. But like,
Well, you get
It
the
was-
sword card to start.
well, I know that. I mean, that was like one of the biggest things was just always just go for a sword card. Like that was our introduction. Like that was the way to introduce people into the game at the time. Was like we'll just do huge races with just go to sword card and then go from there. That was actually it brought a lot of people into the game, honestly. So even stuff like that, it's just you don't have to learn the whole game from the start. Just do something like that. Have like a halfway point and just meet that goal. Keep doing it until you're comfortable with doing the rest.
So what you're saying is breakfast with all rocks is the ultimate starter category.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I heard.
100%.
That's got to be a bingo card. It has to be.
When is bingo again?
Or it should be.
Been too
The
long.
wild card should be getting the Flamberge within 45 minutes.
Oh, good luck with that. We all
Rom will
de-
never complete a card ever with
we
that.
all DQ'd if that's the
No.
case.
Well, on that note, thank you again, everyone, for participating. Thank you, everyone who hung out with us and watched. And this was a lot of fun. I think we should definitely be doing some more Soten community events in the future, and maybe greater Castlevania community events as a whole. And yeah, great job, everyone. Congrats to Team Richter. And we are going to up next on the Speed Gaming channels is a Breath of the Wild tournament continuation on Speed Gaming.